Aloha! It's wonderful to see you all here again at such a critical time. Our democracy is under attack. The perpetrators of this attack are those who, in the name of saving our democracy, are destroying it. I don't use these words lightly. Every one of us who loves this country and who cherishes peace and freedom should be very alarmed by those who, driven by their insatiable hunger for power, are actively undermining all that we stand for. And almost every single day, if you're paying attention to the news and the headlines, there is some new assault and some new attack. Now, it's the Democrat elite and the swamp creatures in Washington who are doing all that they possibly can to keep us, the American people, from a very simple thing, having the freedom to choose who we want to be our next president. And it is clear through their actions they have no respect for us, and they have no respect for our fundamental rights as citizens of this democratic republic. They are so terrified that we, the people, may make what they think is the wrong choice. That in the name of protecting democracy and saving us from ourselves, they're actually destroying our democracy and taking away our freedom. Now, we look throughout history and we can see many examples of evildoers who find some justification, who believe that they are doing the right thing. And so today we see the Democrat elite say with great concern in their voice that if the American people elect Donald Trump again, they warn us he will destroy our democracy. They say he will be the dictator-in-chief, that if he's elected, it will be the last election this country sees. It's laughable. It is so crazy, it's laughable. But they're justifying their actions by telling themselves that they need to destroy our democracy in order to save it. It's lunacy, and it's the mindset and mentality of dictators. They are waging a multi-front battle, and they will stop at nothing until they're successful. I'm going to go through a few of the many examples. We've seen how Colorado, Maine, 32 states have taken some action or another themselves in an unprecedented way to try to remove the leading Republican candidate for president, Donald J. Trump, from the presidential ballots. In defiance of the Constitution, these people are single-handedly deciding that somehow they alone have the authority to take away our right as citizens to decide who we want to be our president. We see in Congress, a progressive congressman, Ro Khanna from California, someone who I've known for years. He is so desperate to take Trump off the ballot that he's demanding that the chairman of the Federal Reserve, a position that's supposed to be nonpartisan and apolitical, take action and intervene to stop the former president from getting reelected. On December 27th of last year, Representative Khanna said in a post on X that Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, quote, should cut interest rates now, given most of inflation was caused by supply shocks. If he doesn't, he may be the person most responsible for the return of Trump. The Democrat elite and their cronies, they're using our criminal justice system to prosecute and distract the Republican presidential candidate in the midst of his campaign. As we know, Donald Trump currently faces 91 charges in 4 criminal cases, 44 on the federal side, 47 on the state side, all felonies. This most recent ruling in New York, the real estate case, charging him a $355 million fine plus nearly $100 million in interest for a business transaction where there was no victim or complaint, where all parties made money. So egregious that even people who are not fans of Donald Trump are standing up and saying this is crazy and criticizing this judge's decision that from the very beginning has been a very clearly politically motivated hit job. This is the truth. They're hoping and doing all that they can convict Donald Trump of some crime, any crime, to try to undermine his support and therefore prevent what they fear most, a second Trump presidency. And there's a reason why they're so afraid of him, because he poses a threat to this establishment where they draw their power from. When we take a step back and look beyond the personalities, look beyond Donald Trump and Joe Biden, what we're facing is a threat of far greater magnitude. A very dangerous precedent is being set. Our democratic republic is being destroyed by the permanent Washington elite, and there are people in both political parties who truly believe they and not the American people have the right to decide who should be our president. They easily and dangerously dismiss our Constitution, the rule of law, the voices of the American people, anointing themselves as the ones who have the power and justification to make this most important decision. Now, I've only mentioned a few of the many examples. I could write a whole book detailing all that's been done, all that the Democrat elite and Washington establishment have done and are doing to try to destroy Donald Trump and steal our election. As you know very well, President Trump has endured years of attacks. What we're seeing now is a continuation of something that began in 2016, ever since he came down that golden escalator. Now, I've met a lot of strong, tough people in my life. I can't think of a single one who could not only withstand all that they are throwing at Donald Trump without crumbling, but someone who would actually choose to keep fighting against the entire Washington establishment. Now, I've known Joe Biden for a long time. I used to consider him a friend. Do you think he could handle this pressure? I don't think so. I think even a fraction of this pressure and stress and attacks that Trump has endured would cause him to crumble. Now, if you listen to what Nikki Haley has been saying, she claims that President Trump only cares about himself and that he's doing all that he's doing only for himself. If that were the case, wouldn't he just walk away from all this? Walk away from the headaches and the attacks and the stress that he's enduring right now? So why doesn't he? I've had the chance to meet with him and speak with him at length, and I've seen firsthand his heartfelt interactions with friends of mine, veterans, and I've seen how he has touched their hearts and moved them to tears as he expressed his appreciation for their service and their sacrifice. No cameras, no crowds, just that heartfelt conveyance of appreciation. I've gotten a sense for what motivates him, and it's got nothing to do with what the Washington establishment is accusing him of. This is a man who's a fighter. His strength and resilience can only come from one place. His ability to endure this hardship can only come from one place, and that's a sincere love and concern for the future of our country and his care for the American people. But we've got a lot of work to do ahead of us. Now is the time for us to act motivated by our love of country. We've got to take all the outrage and sadness and fear that we may feel, caused by those in power who have no care or respect for the will of the people. Take all of those feelings and let that motivate us to take action, to find strength in knowing that they are doing what they're doing because they're afraid of us. That just like we see foreign dictators are afraid of democracy, the Democrat elite are so afraid of a free people and a free society, and the possibility that we, the American people, might make the wrong choice in this election by choosing someone other than them. They are doing all they can through the power of law enforcement, the criminal justice system, the national security state, doing all that they can to stop us from exercising our freedom. They forget that we, the people, are the ones with the power. But we have to use that power. We cannot allow them to get away with this. Our democracy is under attack, and it's up to us to save it. We have to hold those responsible accountable at the ballot box. We have to send this strong message to leaders in both parties that those who abuse their power and undermine our democracy and our freedom will not be tolerated. If we do nothing, if we turn a blind eye to those who are weaponizing our criminal justice system against their political opponents and telling us who we are and aren't allowed to vote for, telling us what we are and aren't allowed to say or see or hear, it will set a dangerous precedent for every election and presidency in the future. And its democracy as we know it will be finished. Now, I know we face challenges in our entire political system. And those challenges are not limited to one political party. There are politicians from both parties who are more interested in serving themselves and their own interests than they are about serving the needs of the American people. And they're not going to give up without a fight. On January 27th, 1838, President Lincoln delivered a powerful speech to the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois. And he said, quote, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." The choice before us is clear. Freedom isn't free. We can't lose sight of what we can accomplish when we, the people, stand together on the foundational principles that this country was built on. A free people with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must protect free speech of all Americans. We must stand against those who'd rather censor, cancel, and smear rather than engage in honest debate as our founding fathers did. When the free speech of one person is threatened, even when that speech is reprehensible to us, the free speech of all people is threatened. Same goes for freedom of religion. In our America, freedom of religion does not mean freedom from religion. Real religion is love for God. It's not attached to any one religious sect or label or another. Our government must respect our freedom to worship and express our faith, express our love for God as we choose. Or, for those who choose not to, they have that right as well. Our founders intentionally passed the Second Amendment right after the First because they knew how fragile this new free democracy was and how susceptible it would be, and it still is, to those who abuse their power to try to take away our freedom. So we have to defend our right to bear arms, not only to defend ourselves and our loved ones, but to serve as that important check on the abuse of power by an increasingly tyrannical government. We must stop the bipartisan warmongers of Washington who constantly beat their war drums, who have pushed us to the precipice of World War III and a nuclear catastrophe. Now, President Eisenhower warned us clearly in his farewell address about these people, those in Washington who bend the knee to their bosses in the military-industrial complex and then shrug their shoulders and look the other way at the costly, damaging, and potentially catastrophic consequences of their decisions, the cost that every one of us pays. We need leaders who are committed to peace, strength, and prosperity, because we cannot be truly prosperous as a nation unless we are at peace. Unfortunately, war is sometimes necessary to defeat those who threaten the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. And as a soldier serving now for almost 21 years in our military and still serves today, I know this firsthand. But I also know that war must always be a last resort after all other avenues have been exhausted. We need leaders who are committed to upholding the rule of law, who are committed to keeping our communities safe and securing our borders. In our America, we must come together inspired by love. Love for God, love for others, love for our country. Because we live in the greatest country in the world. It's filled with potential for us to stand together and build a brighter future and a more perfect union where every American can live free, in peace, and with opportunity for prosperity. To make this future a reality, we must not only come together in spaces like this with our brothers and sisters who agree with us, we also have to reach out to those who we may not agree with on every issue, but who love this country as we do and who are just as frustrated with those abusing their power as we are. Whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or Libertarian, we must stand together as fellow Americans who cherish peace and freedom, cherishing our commitment to save our country and defend our republic. Those in power in America today are leading this great nation toward the suicide Abraham Lincoln warned of. If we do not act now, we will look back at this very moment with regret, but we won't be able to say that we had no warning. By God's grace, we are free and we will remain free. God bless you all. God bless America. Let's go and save our country. Thank you so much, everybody. Aloha. Thank you. Thank you so much. Aloha. It's wonderful to see you all here again at such a critical time. Our democracy is under attack. The perpetrators of this attack are those who, in the name of saving our democracy, are destroying it. I don't use these words lightly. Every one of us who loves this country and who cherishes peace and freedom should be very alarmed by those who, driven by their insatiable hunger for power, are actively undermining all that we stand for. And almost every single day, if you're paying attention to the news and the headlines, there is some new assault and some new attack. Now, it's the Democrat elite and the swamp creatures in Washington who are doing all that they possibly can to keep us, the American people, from a very simple thing, having the freedom to choose who we want to be our next president. And it is clear through their actions they have no respect for us, and they have no respect for our fundamental rights as citizens of this democratic republic. They are so terrified that we, the people, may make what they think is the wrong choice. That in the name of protecting democracy and saving us from ourselves, they're actually destroying our democracy and taking away our freedom. Now, we look throughout history and we can see many examples of evildoers who find some justification, who believe that they are doing the right thing. And so today we see the Democrat elite say with great concern in their voice that if the American people elect Donald Trump again, they warn us he will destroy our democracy. They say he will be the dictator-in-chief, that if he's elected, it will be the last election this country sees. It's laughable. It is so crazy, it's laughable. But they're justifying their actions by telling themselves that they need to destroy our democracy in order to save it. It's lunacy, and it's the mindset and mentality of dictators. They are waging a multi-front battle, and they will stop at nothing until they're successful. I'm going to go through a few of the many examples. We've seen how Colorado, Maine, 32 states have taken some action or another themselves in an unprecedented way to try to remove the leading Republican candidate for president, Donald J. Trump, from the presidential ballots. In defiance of the Constitution, these people are single-handedly deciding that somehow they alone have the authority to take away our right as citizens to decide who we want to be our president. We see in Congress, a progressive Congressman, Ro Khanna from California, someone who I've known for years. He is so desperate to take Trump off the ballot that he's demanding that the chairman of the Federal Reserve, a position that's supposed to be nonpartisan and apolitical, take action and intervene to stop the former president from getting reelected. On December 27th of last year, Representative Khanna said in a post on X that Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, quote, should cut interest rates now, given most of inflation was caused by supply shocks. If he doesn't, he may be the person most responsible for the return of Trump. The Democrat elite and their cronies, they're using our criminal justice system to prosecute and distract the Republican presidential candidate in the midst of his campaign. As we know, Donald Trump currently faces 91 charges in 4 criminal cases, 44 on the federal side, 47 on the state side, all felonies. This most recent ruling in New York, the real estate case, charging him a $355 million fine plus nearly $100 million in interest for a business transaction where there was no victim or complaint, where all parties made money. So egregious that even people who are not fans of Donald Trump are standing up and saying this is crazy and criticizing this judge's decision that from the very beginning has been a very clearly politically motivated hit job. This is the truth. They're hoping and doing all that they can convict Donald Trump of some crime, any crime, to try to undermine his support and therefore prevent what they fear most, a second Trump presidency. And there's a reason why they're so afraid of him, because he poses a threat to this establishment where they draw their power from. When we take a step back and look beyond the personalities, look beyond Donald Trump and Joe Biden, what we're facing is a threat of far greater magnitude. A very dangerous precedent is being set. Our democratic republic is being destroyed by the permanent Washington elite, and there are people in both political parties who truly believe they and not the American people have the right to decide who should be our president. They easily and dangerously dismiss our Constitution, the rule of law, the voices of the American people, anointing themselves as the ones who have the power and justification to make this most important decision. Now, I've only mentioned a few of the many examples. I could write a whole book detailing all that's been done, all that the Democrat elite and Washington establishment have done and are doing to try to destroy Donald Trump and steal our election. As you know very well, President Trump has endured years of attacks. What we're seeing now is a continuation of something that began in 2016, ever since he came down that golden escalator. Now, I've met a lot of strong, tough people in my life. I can't think of a single one who could not only withstand all that they are throwing at Donald Trump without crumbling, but someone who would actually choose to keep fighting against the entire Washington establishment. Now, I know we face challenges in our entire political system, and those challenges are not limited to one political party. There are politicians from both parties who are more interested in serving themselves and their own interests than they are about serving the needs of the American people. And they're not going to give up without a fight. On January 27th, 1838, President Lincoln delivered a powerful speech to the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois. And he said, quote, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." The choice before us is clear. Freedom isn't free. We can't lose sight of what we can accomplish when we, the people, stand together on the foundational principles that this country was built on. A free people with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must protect free speech of all Americans. We must stand against those who'd rather censor, cancel, and smear rather than engage in honest debate as our founding fathers did. When the free speech of one person is threatened, even when that speech is reprehensible to us, the free speech of all people is threatened. Same goes for freedom of religion. In our America, freedom of religion does not mean freedom from religion. Real religion is love for God. It's not attached to any one religious sect or label or another. Our government must respect our freedom to worship and express our faith, express our love for God as we choose. Or, for those who choose not to, they have that right as well. Our founders intentionally passed the Second Amendment right after the First because they knew how fragile this new free democracy was and how susceptible it would be, and it still is, to those who abuse their power to try to take away our freedom. So we have to defend our right to bear arms, not only to defend ourselves and our loved ones, but to serve as that important check on the abuse of power by an increasingly tyrannical government. We must stop the bipartisan warmongers of Washington who constantly beat their war drums, who have pushed us to the precipice of World War III and a nuclear catastrophe. Now, President Eisenhower warned us clearly in his farewell address about these people, those in Washington who bend the knee to their bosses in the military-industrial complex and then shrug their shoulders and look the other way at the costly, damaging, and potentially catastrophic consequences of their decisions, the cost that every one of us pays. We need leaders who are committed to peace, strength, and prosperity, because we cannot be truly prosperous as a nation unless we are at peace. Unfortunately, war is sometimes necessary to defeat those who threaten the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. And as a soldier serving now for almost 21 years in our military and still serves today, I know this firsthand. But I also know that war must always be a last resort after all other avenues have been exhausted. We need leaders who are committed to upholding the rule of law, who are committed to keeping our communities safe and securing our borders. In our America, we must come together inspired by love. Love for God, love for others, love for our country. Because we live in the greatest country in the world. It's filled with potential for us to stand together and build a brighter future and a more perfect union where every American can live free, in peace, and with opportunity for prosperity. To make this future a reality, we must not only come together in spaces like this with our brothers and sisters who agree with us, we also have to reach out to those who we may not agree with on every issue, but who love this country as we do and who are just as frustrated with those abusing their power as we are. Whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or Libertarian, we must stand together as fellow Americans who cherish peace and freedom, cherishing our commitment to save our country and defend our republic. Those in power in America today are leading this great nation toward the suicide Abraham Lincoln warned of. If we do not act now, we will look back at this very moment with regret, but we won't be able to say that we had no warning. By God's grace, we are free and we will remain free. God bless you all. God bless America. Let's go and save our country. Thank you so much, everybody. Aloha. Thank you. I've known Joe Biden for a long time. I used to consider him a friend. Do you think he could handle this pressure? I don't think so. I think even a fraction of this pressure and stress and attacks that Trump has endured would cause him to crumble. Now, if you listen to what Nikki Haley has been saying, she claims that President Trump only cares about himself and that he's doing all that he's doing only for himself. If that were the case, wouldn't he just walk away from all this? Walk away from the headaches and the attacks and the stress that he's enduring right now? So why doesn't he? I've had the chance to meet with him and speak with him at length, and I've seen firsthand his heartfelt interactions with friends of mine, veterans, and I've seen how he has touched their hearts and moved them to tears as he expressed his appreciation for their service and their sacrifice. No cameras, no crowds, just that heartfelt conveyance of appreciation. I've gotten a sense for what motivates him, and it's got nothing to do with what the Washington establishment is accusing him of. This is a man who's a fighter. His strength and resilience can only come from one place. His ability to endure this hardship can only come from one place, and that's a sincere love and concern for the future of our country and his care for the American people. But we've got a lot of work to do ahead of us. Now is the time for us to act motivated by our love of country. We've got to take all the outrage and sadness and fear that we may feel, caused by those in power who have no care or respect for the will of the people. Take all of those feelings and let that motivate us to take action, to find strength in knowing that they are doing what they're doing because they're afraid of us. That just like we see foreign dictators are afraid of democracy, the Democrat elite are so afraid of a free people and a free society, and the possibility that we, the American people, might make the wrong choice in this election by choosing someone other than them. They are doing all they can through the power of law enforcement, the criminal justice system, national security state, doing all that they can to stop us from exercising our freedom. They forget that we, the people, are the ones with the power. But we have to use that power. We cannot allow them to get away with this. Our democracy is under attack, and it's up to us to save it. We have to hold those responsible accountable at the ballot box. We have to send this strong message to leaders in both parties that those who abuse their power and undermine our democracy and our freedom will not be tolerated. If we do nothing, if we turn a blind eye to those who are weaponizing our criminal justice system against their political opponents and telling us who we are and aren't allowed to vote for, telling us what we are and aren't allowed to say or see or hear, it will set a dangerous precedent for every election and presidency in the future. And this democracy as we know it will be finished.
I love this great country, and I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I was walking around earlier today, and I feel this sense of hope, of inspiration and motivation, because you know how serious the task at hand is before us. Never before in my life did I think that we would be having to gather here in a place like this with the knowledge that our fundamental rights and freedoms, the principles of this great country, are under attack. Not by some foreign power, but from those in some of the highest positions of power right here in our own government. It's for this reason that this is the most important election of our lives. Now, you may have heard this over and over again. Oftentimes, this is a line that's used by politicians as they are running for office. I'm not on a ballot. I am here because I am terrified for what our country looks like if those in power today abusing their power are allowed to remain there. This country that we love will become unrecognizable. And my concern is that once our freedoms are lost at that point, it will be virtually impossible to get them back. We are seeing attacks on freedom of speech. We are seeing an unprecedented assault on the rule of law. The weaponization of our Department of Justice and law enforcement, the national security state, to go after Joe Biden's political opponents. We're seeing the fundamental pillars and foundations of our democratic republic being undermined. The mission that we have before us is a no-fail mission. It is a no-fail mission. And it's not up to someone else to fight this battle to defend our freedom. It is up to every single one of us as Americans. I know there are a lot of you who are here today who have worn the cloth of this country, who have served both in peacetime and in wartime. Every one of you, like I did, raised our right hand and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I took that same oath as a member of Congress, and it's something that, like you, I take very seriously. And so to those who are attacking our freedoms, who are throwing our Constitution in the trash, this is real. This is real. Even if you have laid down your uniform, that oath is written onto our hearts. I joined the Democratic Party over 20 years ago. I was 21 years old in Hawaii, and maybe like some of you, back then I saw a Democratic Party that actually stood for free speech. It was a big tent open party that welcomed people from all different backgrounds, different views, even those they disagreed with. It was a party that stood up for civil liberties, a party that fought for the little guy and still celebrated that vision of Martin Luther King Jr. Fast forward to where we are today, that party is completely unrecognizable. I left the Democratic Party because it is now under the control of an elitist cabal of woke warmongers who are doing all that they can. Who are doing all that they can to destroy our freedom, to take away our constitutional rights, to divide us by racializing everything. Everything has become about race, going directly against that dream of Martin Luther King Jr. They are attacking our freedom of religion. They are pushing us closer and closer to the brink of World War III and nuclear war. How could I, in good conscience, as someone who took that oath to our Constitution, be associated in any way with a party that hates freedom and is destroying the Constitution? These are very powerful people with powerful tools that they are weaponizing against us and against our freedoms. But as we look to the next 5 months before us and this no-fail mission that we have, it's important for you to know that I'm not the only Democrat who's left the Democratic Party. There are many more of us than you may realize. I meet or hear from people every single day as I travel across the country who will come up to me and say, I did the same thing that you did. I felt the same way that you did. Just here today, I met a woman who came up to me and shared that she was unable to convince her daughter, who was working for Gavin Newsom, to leave the Democratic Party But once she heard my I love this great country, and I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I was walking around earlier today, and I feel this sense of hope, of inspiration and motivation, because you know how serious the task at hand is before us. Never before in my life did I think that we would be having to gather here in a place like this with the knowledge that our fundamental rights and freedoms, the principles of this great country, are under attack. Not by some foreign power, but from those in some of the highest positions of power right here in our own government. It's for this reason that this is the most important election of our lives. Now, you may have heard this over and over again. Oftentimes, this is a line that's used by politicians as they are running for office. I'm not on a ballot. I am here because I am terrified for what our country looks like if those in power today abusing their power are allowed to remain there. This country that we love will become unrecognizable. And my concern is that once our freedoms are lost at that point, it will be virtually impossible to get them back. We are seeing attacks on freedom of speech. We are seeing an unprecedented assault on the rule of law, the weaponization of our Department of Justice and law enforcement, the national security state, to go after Joe Biden's political opponents. We're seeing the fundamental pillars and foundations of our democratic republic being undermined. The mission that we have before us is a no-fail mission. It is a no-fail mission. And it's not up to someone else to fight this battle to defend our freedom. It is up to every single one of us as Americans. I know there are a lot of you who are here today who have worn the cloth of this country, who have served both in peacetime and in wartime. Every one of you, like I did, raised our right hand and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I took that same oath as a member of Congress, and it's something that, like you, I take very seriously. And so to those who are attacking our freedoms, who are throwing our Constitution in the trash, this is real. This is real. Even if you have laid down your uniform, that oath is written onto our hearts. I joined the Democratic Party over 20 years ago. I was 21 years old in Hawaii, and maybe like some of you, back then I saw a Democratic Party that actually stood for free speech. It was a big tent open party that welcomed people from all different backgrounds, different views, even those they disagreed with. It was a party that stood up for civil liberties, a party that fought for the little guy and still celebrated that vision of Martin Luther King Jr. Fast forward to where we are today, that party is completely unrecognizable. I left the Democratic Party because it is now under the control of an elitist cabal of woke warmongers who are doing all that they can to destroy our freedom, to take away our constitutional rights, to divide us by racializing everything. Everything has become about race, going directly against that dream of Martin Luther King Jr. They are attacking our freedom of religion. They are pushing us closer and closer to the brink of World War III and nuclear war. How could I, in good conscience, as someone who took that oath to our Constitution be associated in any way with a party that hates freedom and is destroying the Constitution. These are very powerful people with powerful tools that they are weaponizing against us and against our freedoms. But as we look to the next 5 months before us and this no-fail mission that we have, it's important for you to know that I'm not the only Democrat who's left the Democratic Party. There are many more of us than you may realize. I meet or hear from people every single day as I travel across the country who will come up to me and say, I did the same thing that you did. I felt the same way that you did. Just here today, I met a woman who came up to me and shared that she was unable to convince her daughter, who was working for Gavin Newsom, to leave the Democratic Party. But once she heard my story, she said, enough is enough. I'm out. Let's go fight to save America. Alexandra is watching or listening out there. Keep staying strong and spreading this message of freedom. This is our opportunity, our privilege, and our responsibility as citizens in this country. We can gather together in rooms like this and build our strategy on how we will reach out to those who may never feel like they belong at a room like this. But people who love this country deeply and who are terrified about the direction the Biden administration, the Democrat elite, are taking us. Reach out that hand and welcome them to the cause of freedom. This is our opportunity, and this is how we win in November. So what's at stake here? Nothing short of our freedom and the very identity and foundation of what makes this country the greatest country in the world. We've seen over just the last few years the brazen abuse of power that gets more and more brazen as the days go on. It's becoming harder and harder to ignore, even for those who aren't even paying attention to politics. We look at how, on the one hand, the Biden administration says one thing, and the thing that they do is the exact opposite. President Biden has said his whole foreign policy is about democracies defeating autocracies, and that he is somehow the champion of democracy. Let's look at what he's doing to our democracy right here at home. Tearing it apart. Trying to take away our right to vote for the candidate of our choosing, take away our right to express our freedom of speech. You look at how many years that they said, well, we've got a secure border. Trust me, we have a secure border. When anyone who's gone to the border like I have can see that it is not only not secure, it is wide open. Even with this latest action taken by President Biden's executive order, all he has done in the name of securing the border is institutionalizing illegal immigration crossing this border, aiding and abetting the multi-billion-dollar human trafficking industry that the cartels are running. We can't trust a single thing that they say, because every time they say they are doing something, they are actually doing the opposite. We have seen in the news a few days ago, you had the FBI Director Christopher Wray going before Congress asking for more money because of an increasing foreign terrorist threat growing within our own borders. I thought it was interesting to me as he said this, and shortly after he said it, they caught 8 people who crossed through Joe Biden's open borders from Tajikistan who are actually a part of ISIS. He never actually mentioned, well, the open borders are what is allowing this wide open welcome mat for these infamous terrorists to come into our country and plan attack from within. He also didn't mention about how much of the FBI's resources that he is asking for more of are being used against our fellow Americans, targeting those who are exercising their right to free speech, targeting and looking at those who are peaceful pro-life protesters, targeting and looking at those parents who are going to Board of Education meetings and protesting and saying, no, my daughter is a girl and she should not have to compete against boys and girls sports. So when we take a step back and we look at all of the powerful entities who are waging war against our freedom, we have the Democrat elite in Washington, the Washington establishment, law enforcement, the national security state, you have big tech, you have big propaganda media. Why are they doing this? Why are they fighting so hard? It's because they're afraid. They are afraid of a free people in a free society exercising our freedoms, our voice, and making sure that we actually have a government of, by, and for the people. Because that means we will throw them out of office and send them home on Election Day. We're the only people who can stop them. How do we hold them to account for their brazen abuse of power, their destruction of our democracy? We are the only ones who can hold them to account by sending a strong message, an unequivocal message on November 5th, on Election Day, saying that those like Joe Biden, who abuse their power, who reject our Constitution, will not be allowed to remain in power. We will send them home and vote for Donald Trump on November 5th. I want to leave you with an important and chilling quote from President Lincoln. He gave a speech on January 27th in 1838 to the Young Men's Lyceum in Springfield, Illinois. And he said, quote, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." Those in power in America today are the ones who are leading our great nation towards this suicide that Abraham Lincoln warned against. If we don't act now, if we don't take this no-fail mission to save our country seriously, we will regrettably find ourselves on the other side of this election looking back and saying, we had no warning. So how do we do this? How do we save our country? We come together filled with hope and motivated by love. Love for God, love for our fellow Americans, love for our country, and a deep, visceral commitment to the defense of freedom. I was in Hawaii recently, going and doing my PT. I was running around the track at the Kaneohe Marine Corps Base. And it was in the morning. I had my AirPods in as I was running around the track. And in the corner of my eye, I saw a guy who was mowing the lawn there. All of a sudden, stopped. As I went along jogging more, I saw a woman pushing a stroller down the sidewalk. All of a sudden, stopped. A car driving down the street stopped. Finally, I stopped, took down my AirPod, wondering what was going on. And I heard the beautiful sound of reveille playing. This beautiful sound of a trumpet that occurs every morning and every evening on every military base in America and around the world. That sounds the call for us to stop and reflect as our beautiful flag is being raised in the morning and lowered at the end of the day. In those moments, opportunity to reflect on the many who have sacrificed and given all in service to our country and our freedom. So as we go forward over these next 5 months, and the days that you may feel tired or weary, or the days that you may be attacked simply for saying how much you love this country. Draw strength and courage from the sacrifices of those who have come before us, and know that we, the people, must prevail in this election and save this country that we love. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for staying in this public forum. God bless you. God bless America. Aloha. Thank you. She said, enough is enough. I'm out. Let's go fight to save America. Alexandra is watching or listening out there. Keep staying strong and spreading this message of freedom. This is our opportunity, our privilege, and our responsibility as citizens in this country. We can gather together in rooms like this and build our strategy on how we will reach out to those who may never feel like they belong at a room like this. But people who love this country deeply and who are terrified about the direction the Biden administration, the Democrat elite, are taking us. Reach out that hand and welcome them to the cause of freedom. This is our opportunity, and this is how we win in November. So what's at stake here? Nothing short of our freedom and the very identity and foundation of what makes this country the greatest country in the world. We've seen over just the last few years the brazen abuse of power that gets more and more brazen as the days go on. It's becoming harder and harder to ignore, even for those who aren't even paying attention to politics. We look at how, on the one hand, the Biden administration says one thing, and the thing that they do is the exact opposite. President Biden has said his whole foreign policy is about democracies defeating autocracies, and that he is somehow the champion of democracy. Let's look at what he's doing to our democracy right here at home. Tearing it apart. Trying to take away our right to vote for the candidate of our choosing, take away our right to express our freedom of speech. You look at how many years that they said, well, we've got a secure border. Trust me, we have a secure border. When anyone who's gone to the border like I have can see that it is not only not secure, it is wide open. Even with this latest action taken by President Biden's executive order, all he has done in the name of securing the border is institutionalizing illegal immigration crossing this border, aiding and abetting the multi-billion-dollar human trafficking industry that the cartels are running. We can't trust a single thing that they say, because every time they say they are doing something, they are actually doing the opposite. We have seen in the news a few days ago, you had the FBI Director Christopher Wray going before Congress asking for more money because of an increasing foreign terrorist threat growing within our own borders. I thought it was interesting to me as he said this, and shortly after he said it, they caught 8 people who crossed through Joe Biden's open borders from Tajikistan who are actually a part of ISIS. He never actually mentioned, well, the open borders are what is allowing this wide open welcome mat for these infamous terrorists to come into our country and plan attack from within. He also didn't mention about how much of the FBI's resources that he is asking for more of are being used against our fellow Americans. Targeting those who are exercising their right to free speech. Targeting and looking at those who are peaceful pro-life protesters. Targeting and looking at those parents who are going to Board of Education meetings and protesting and saying, no, my daughter is a girl and she should not have to compete against boys and girls sports. So when we take a step back and we look at all of the powerful entities who are waging war against our freedom, we have the Democrat elite in Washington, the Washington establishment, law enforcement, the national security state, you have big tech, you have big propaganda media. Why are they doing this? Why are they fighting so hard? It's because they're afraid. They are afraid of a free people in a free society exercising our freedoms, our voice, and making sure that we actually have a government of, by, and for the people. Because that means we will throw them out of office and send them home on election day. We're the only people who can stop them. How do we hold them to account for their brazen abuse of power, their destruction of our democracy? We are the only ones who can hold them to account by sending a strong message, an unequivocal message on November 5th, on Election Day, saying that those like Joe Biden, who abuse their power, who reject our Constitution, will not be allowed to remain in power. We will send them home and vote for Donald Trump on November 5th.
Aloha. Aloha. Got somebody from Hawaii right here. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you here in our nation's capital at such a pivotal time. We truly live in the greatest country in the world because of the founding principles upon which our country was created. I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, twice, both as a soldier who enlisted in the wake of 9/11, like so many Americans, as well as as a member of Congress, where I served for 8 years. I take this oath seriously, and it is our Constitution that is under attack today. I first joined the Democratic Party over 20 years ago. I was 21 years old, and what I saw back then was a party that still stood for free speech. That was a big open tent party that welcomed people with different ideas, different backgrounds, different religions, that stood up for civil liberties, that fought for everyday Americans. It was a party of the little guy. Fast forward to where we are today, that party is completely unrecognizable. I left the Democratic Party because it is led I left that party because it is led by an elitist cabal of woke warmongers. They are driven by an insatiable greed for power, and they are willing to do whatever they deem is necessary, even the destruction of our freedom, to get what they want and to stay in power. This is the challenge and the threat behind those who are abusing their power in more brazen ways than I ever would have imagined today. I left the Democratic Party because it's led by fanatical ideologues who don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and the right of every one of us to express ourselves without fear of retribution or retaliation from those in power. They censor speech they don't like. Why and how? They say, we need to protect you from yourselves, and so we have to protect you from things that we call misinformation, disinformation, or hate speech, speech that they don't like. They undermine our civil liberties, working with powerful entities in the propaganda media and big tech. They're trying to get rid of our Second Amendment in every way possible, rejecting the very reason why our founders passed it right after the First Amendment, rejecting the reality that every one of us has a right to defend ourselves and our loved ones, and that we are the check on the abuse of power by an increasingly tyrannical government. And that is what we are facing today. They reject our Constitution that fundamentally recognizes that our freedom comes from God, no one else. I left the Democratic Party because its leaders reject this truth and are increasingly hostile towards people of faith and spirituality, actively seeking to undermine our religious freedom and the spiritual foundation of our country. They are targeting people of faith. You heard from the last speaker and others very real examples of this, how they are targeting especially Christians. They are targeting peaceful pro-life protesters. They are targeting those they deem as radical traditionalist Catholics. Thomas Jefferson said, "God who gave us life gave us liberty. Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God?" Of course, the answer to that is no. To recognize each other as children of God is to appreciate that every one of us belongs to God and to no one else. So no government, no person, no individual or institution has the right to take away the freedom that God has given us. This is the foundation of the social construct of the United States of America, and it is the core of who we really are. Any political party that is trying to erase the presence of God from every facet of public life and is hostile towards those who choose to worship God cannot be trusted to protect our inalienable God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution and should not be in power. These are just a few of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party and why many people across this country are doing the same. They recognize the great challenges that we face as a country. They recognize how powerful the forces of darkness are. They recognize how the Biden-Harris administration and their allies are taking unprecedented action to destroy our democracy, to undermine the rule of law, by politicizing the justice system to go after their political opponents. Foremost among them, former President Donald Trump. What is the effect of this? The effect of this is essentially they are stealing our democracy. They're taking away our right, our fundamental right in this free country to make our own decision for ourselves, who we want to be our next president and commander-in-chief. This is not what happens in a democratic republic. This is what happens in a banana republic. And just as we see in these banana republics around the world, in dictatorships in other parts of the world, there are very real consequences to these actions. It creates this culture of fear amongst the people. Fear of political retribution, retaliation. Fear that those in positions of great power and authority will use their power against anyone who dares to challenge their authority. You may remember President Biden gave a speech a couple of years ago in Philadelphia where he placed a target on the backs of tens of millions of Americans who happened to not vote for him, when he said MAGA Republicans are the most extreme domestic threat to our democracy. You hear this refrain over and over. You hear the pundits on mainstream propaganda TV. You hear people in the White House, these MAGA Republicans. They say this term over and over. Who are the MAGA Republicans they speak of? I see a lot of hands going up here. I have the opportunity to travel across the country and speak to amazing, great Americans who love our country and cherish peace and freedom. And I meet a lot of these people they call MAGA Republicans. They are the moms for liberty who are standing up for their children in small towns and big cities across the country. They are those who are proud to salute our flag and express our love for our country. They are those who stand up and defend our right to free speech, who defend our right to bear arms. It is those who have the audacity to say, as a nation, we must have secure borders. It is those who say, in no uncertain terms, there is such a thing as a woman. Let me hear the ladies out there. And there is no greater expression of hatred and hostility towards women than what they are doing in trying to erase us as an entire category of people. Who are these MAGA Republicans? They are those who stand up for the most vulnerable amongst us. They are those who say, no, we will not allow you to sexualize and violate our children in schools. They are those who are saying, you must stop tearing us apart, fomenting racism and hate by racializing everything, betraying Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream for us. These people have cast a dark shadow over our country. And it's understandable why many people may feel hopeless at times, may feel like it's hard to see a way out. It's hard to see how we can combat these great powers that are colluding against us and against our freedom and our country. It's understandable why at times we may be afraid to stand up and speak the truth, to stand up for that which we know is right, and to stand up and speak out against that which we know is wrong, afraid to be labeled as a bigot or a racist or any of the other terms that they use to try to smear those who challenge their power. In those moments, when we are confronted with that doubt or that fear, it's important that we ask ourselves, what are we really afraid of? Who are we trying to please? Come on. Are we here to serve and please God, our eternal well-wisher, our best friend? Or do we have some other master, someone other than God that we are trying to please, that we are concerned about displeasing? We cannot be a servant of two masters. So the choice is ours. What is our purpose? Who are we in this world to serve? Who are we dedicating our lives to? I'm so grateful to have experienced from a young age that I was happiest when I was doing my best to serve God in whatever way that I could. To experience in times of great hardship and in times of joy, in times of peace here at home or in times of war in battlefields in the Middle East or in Africa, that when I choose God and rest in His eternal love, I find peace. I find comfort. Finding comfort in God's love when He tells us, don't be afraid, I am with you. It is in Him where we find strength to speak the truth, and strength rooted in love, not hate. Strength to stand up for what is right and to treat others, whether we agree or disagree with them, with love and respect. Because there's nothing more powerful than love. Our hope comes from God's unconditional and eternal love for us, and we know that only that love can defeat hate. Our future and the future of our nation is in our hands. And we, the people, we, the American people, have a no-fail mission. Our founders were talking to us when they said, we the people. They were talking to us when they spoke of a self-governed nation. All that the Democrat elite are doing now to try to take away our freedom, we should be empowered to know why they are doing this. As powerful as they seem to be, they are terrified of us. Because they know that a free people in a free society exercising our freedom and fulfilling our responsibility as Americans is the greatest threat to their power. We are only powerful if we use it. We have a huge election standing before us on November 5th. This is a pivotal moment where if we do not complete this no-fail mission and throw out of office the Biden-Harris administration and those who choose power over freedom, if we fail in this mission, I fear we will wake up on the other side of this election, speeding towards a country that we will no longer recognize. Now, we might not agree on every issue. I guarantee you every person in this room doesn't agree on every issue, but neither did our founding fathers. They had fierce debates and conversations about things they felt strongly about in private and in public. This is the vibrant marketplace of ideas that is the foundation of a democratic republic. They came together around the most important things, the founding principles of our country. And so the message that we need to carry out as you leave this amazing conference inspired and energized is to reach out to others who may not know what to do in this election, who feel politically homeless, who recognize that our country is headed down a dangerous path, but don't quite know what to do. Reach out to them and encourage them to join us around these founding principles because of the essential task before us to defend our freedom. Now, God has given us free will. In these coming months and throughout our lives, we can choose to hide in the shadows and cower in fear, or we can choose to act and lead with love. We can choose to elect leaders who are committed to the Constitution, putting the interests of the American people and our nation first. Choose to fight the darkness of fear and hatred with the light of courage, love, and respect. Have faith that the light of God's unconditional love burns brightly in every one of our hearts and will give us that strength and that clarity and that true happiness that we seek, and that He will guide us every day, every step through these dark times to the bright future that our founders envisioned for our great country. Let us never forget, we belong to God and to no one else. And by God's grace, we are free, and we will remain free. Thank you all so much. God bless you. God bless America. Aloha. Thank you.
Tulsi, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Aloha. I know we got Hawaii in the house here. There we go. It is a privilege to be here with all of you, my brothers and sisters in uniform, especially on this day of all days. I had the privilege of joining President Trump this morning at Arlington Cemetery, where he joined two Gold Star families and loved ones of Staff Sergeant Hoover and Sergeant G, both of whom were two of the 13 killed in the Abbey Gate attack 3 years ago today in Kabul. And I can tell you, as we were there, as he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, joining these Marines' loved ones, I felt the sorrow that he shared with them in their loss. I felt and saw his sincere appreciation for these servicemen and women who paid the ultimate price and their loved ones who continue to grieve to this day. This is personal for me, as I know it is for so many of you here. This is real. It's not just words. I first deployed to Iraq in 2005 with the Hawaii Army National Guard as a member of Charlie Med. As those of you who were deployed during that time know, it was the height of the war, and sadly, we took many casualties. And every day we were confronted with that high human cost of war and that sadness as we boarded the plane when we left, that we were leaving some of our brothers and sisters behind, only to lose others when we got home to suicide. So I mean what I say when I share with you that I know that President Trump understands the grave responsibility that a president and commander-in-chief bears for every single one of our lives. Whether you're a soldier, you're an airman, a Marine, sailor, or a coastie, he keeps us in his heart in the decisions that he makes. We saw this through his first term in the presidency, when he not only didn't start any new wars, he took action to de-escalate and prevent wars. He exercised the courage that we expect from our commander-in-chief in exhausting all measures of diplomacy, having the courage to meet with adversaries, dictators, allies, and partners alike in the pursuit of peace, seeing war as a last resort. The truth is, as we head towards our decision as a country in November, the same cannot be said about Kamala Harris. In fact, the opposite is true, and we're living through this reality today as this administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat. Kamala Harris has done this over the last 3.5 years. She won't hesitate to continue that if she is elected as president. President Trump has been their first and foremost target in this because they don't want us as voters to even have the option to vote for him. I've been their most recent target, added to a secret domestic terror watch list after exposing the truth about what kind of dangers we would face if Kamala Harris is elected as president. We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. We can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future. I am proud to stand here before you today, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. If you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. USA. 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 We love our country. We love our country, don't we? It's amazing. And it's a great country, but we have to take it back because our country's not feeling so well nowadays, and we're going to bring it back, and we're going to make it healthy and beautiful and better than ever. And it's really, this is some crowd, and you can duplicate the crowd outside. So if anybody would like to give up your seat, that would be okay. No, no. Let's have a good time. Thank you very much, everybody.
That song gets me fired up every
It's
time.
so great. Lee Greenwood, so great. Great guy, too.
Well, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
This is a very special evening for us all to have a conversation about some of the real issues that are facing Americans across the country and that don't get talked about often enough. And I want to start with one that's very personal to me, hard to talk about sometimes. This is only the second time I've spoken about it publicly, but my husband and I were married almost 10 years ago. We wanted to start a family. We were very excited about it. Unfortunately, it was very difficult we were not successful in trying to get pregnant. For us, IVF seemed to be the only option and the last resort. As you know, it's a pretty difficult process. It's very, very expensive. I was in Congress at the time, traveling. I would carry the medicine that I had to administer shots to myself sometimes in an airport bathroom. And ultimately, the most difficult part was every time going to the doctor for another transfer and hoping that it would result in a positive pregnancy test, and then being heartbroken over and over every time that test came back negative. Now, I know some of your opponents, your political opponents, are saying that you want to ban IVF. While it didn't work for us, it's worked for a lot of families. And I just know that there are women and couples in this crowd, or those who are watching here tonight, who may be going through this same struggle and are concerned about being able to have this option, either because they might not be able to afford it, or they're concerned that it just may not be available. And I'd love for you to talk to them about how they should feel.
Well, thank you very much, Tulsi. And I didn't know about your situation. And it's tough stuff, right? Tough. Life is pretty tough. It can be beautiful, but it can be difficult. We are doing something with IVF, because IVF, as you know, from friends and people you know, it's really worked out very well for a lot of people. It gave them a child when they would not have had a child. And I told my people I wanted to look at this a couple of weeks ago. And as you know, we have no taxes on a thing called tips. You know that? And I said, tell me, we did three things. We did that, and we did no tax for seniors on Social Security benefits. We want to have that. And I've been seeing a lot of IVF, and I kept hearing that I'm against it, and I'm actually very much for it. In fact, in Alabama, where the judge ruled against it, and I countered the judge and came out with a very strong statement for it. And the Alabama...
You were very quick in your response to that.
I was, but they were too. They were amazing. The legislature approved virtually my statement. I mean, full IVF, and it has really gone. It's terrific. And I said, so with the tips and with the Social Security, the no taxes on Social Security, I said maybe for IVF, and I've been looking at it, and what we're going to do is for people that are using IVF, which is fertilization, the government is going to pay for it, or we're going to get or mandate your insurance company to pay for it, which is going to be great. We're going to do that.
I can't tell you how life-changing that would be for so many families, because it costs a lot of money. A lot of people go into debt just for the hope of being able to start their own family.
Well, it's big, and you know what? We want to produce babies in this country, right? We want to produce babies. So I think it's going to be something we sort of announced it a little bit. We were in a great place, Michigan. We all love Michigan, right? We're going to bring back the car industry, and we're going to get a lot of it back to Michigan. They've been taking our cars away. They've been taking our manufacturing away over years, over decades. And if you look at it today, it's a shell of what it was years ago, but we're going to bring it back. Mexico is right now building massive car factories, actually being financed and built by China, and they think they're going to sell their cars back into our country. It's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Oh, listen to that. That is not going to happen. But so many things have gone wrong in the car industry. The union leadership has been horrible. I think I'm going to win by 85%, the union, but because we're bringing it back. And we're going to have electric cars, but we're going to have gasoline-powered cars, and we're going to have hybrids. We're going to have every kind of car. We're not going with just that. But I just felt that it would be a good place to announce it, and we did sort of the announcement there a little bit, and now we do the big announcement tonight in front of all of these television stations, all of the fake news, you know, the fake, they're all over the place. They're all over the place. I don't know what's going on. We don't even know, I was saying, because we're doing this, and I finished, and I figured I was going to come here, and we're going to make a speech. I had a speech all set for you. I was ready. They said, sir, you're actually doing a town hall. I said, oh, nobody told me that. I said, who's doing it? They said, Tulsi. I said, well, that's at least good news. I've been a fan of hers for a long time, I have to tell you. So I didn't even know. I'm in the plane, and I'm looking over some material, and we're going to give you a hell of a speech tonight. We were set to give you one hell of a speech. They said, no, sir, it's a town hall. I said, why doesn't somebody tell me this stuff? And I don't even have any idea who we're doing it for. I don't know. Is it for a network or what? I see a lot of television all over the place, so maybe it's on all of them. But I did get to see the strangest thing today. I looked at the news conference of Kamala. I call her Comrade Kamala. She's you know that. She's a Marxist. Her father was a Marxist before her, so she was brought up in the family tradition, and she really is, and this country is not ready for a Marxist. We don't want a Marxist as a president, and she destroyed San Francisco, she destroyed California, and we're not going to let it destroy our country. I'll tell you, it's not going to happen. So, but just to finish, so for some reason she doesn't want to talk to anybody. So she's either not the smartest light in the ceiling. I'm trying to be nice here. I want to be. They say, be nice, sir, be nice. You know, it's hard to be nice when somebody is destroying your country and wants to destroy your country. It's hard to be like nice. But she is, she was a terrible vice president. She was a terrible border czar, worst in history probably, not just in this country. But the border, you know, millions and millions of people, I say 20 million plus, have poured through the border during their term. I had the safest border in the history of our country. They have the most unsafe border in the history of the world. And they're coming through, and many of them are from prisons and jails. There's a slight difference, as you know, prisons and jails. Many are from mental institutions and insane asylums, and many are terrorists. And they're pouring into our country at a level. I don't know if you saw the news today, Tulsi. They had a group of, a lot of them, Venezuelan people with lots of machine guns taking over a building someplace. I'm looking, I'm saying, where is that? They went in and they took over a building. This is just the beginning. They're taking their criminals from all over the world, not just South America, not just Venezuela, which you've been reading about, all over the world. They're taking their criminals and they're dumping them into the United States. Kamala is allowing it to happen. And they actually want to give them papers. They want to make them citizens, and they want to give them your Social Security. They want to give them your Medicare, and your Social Security will collapse under her. I'm the one that's going to protect the Social Security. But they're coming, I will totally protect, as I did for 4 years. And there was no age increase, there was no anything. We're going to protect. You know, they destroy you with inflation, and then they want to destroy your Social Security. It's not going to happen. But this is going to be the most important election in the history of our country. So I just want to say that it's an honor to be with you tonight. It's a forum that's very different because I have no idea who the hell is broadcasting it. But all we'll do is we'll talk because we're friends. I love this state. I gave them Marinette. We gave them a very big... You know, Tulsi, we have a ship contract, and as you know, we gave Marinette yards, but we gave them a tremendous contract. They wanted it all over the country. I said, we're going to get it for Wisconsin, and it's a big one, and they're doing a great job, I understand. So we got that, and we're going to have a good time tonight. So let's go.
Mr. President, you talked about immigration. We actually have Amber here who's quite concerned about that, and she's got a question for you.
Mr. President, hello. My name is Amber, and I'm from Cameron, Wisconsin. I have 3 beautiful children, and I'm torn on who to support. My youngest daughter is here tonight. My oldest son is 18, and he just started trade school this week. Very proud of him. My concern is that illegal immigration is threatening opportunities for my children. I worry that it's taking away jobs from Americans. I'm wondering, what will you do about that?
All right, well, it's great. I think I'll stand up and... Do you mind if I turn around? Thank you, Amber, very much. And you're right. I'll tell you, we have the people that I'm talking about. They're pouring in at levels never seen before. They're coming in by millions and millions, and a lot of them are taking the jobs for the black population, the Hispanic population, and unions are going to be very badly affected because, and I was talking to some of the union heads who I actually do get along with, but they're very concerned about it because the jobs that are, the people that are coming in are just taken, and it's going to start with the black population. African Americans are losing their jobs, and I don't know if you heard the latest statistic that of the jobs that these people created, which is very little, every single job was taken, about 107% was taken by illegal immigrants. There's been no job creation from them. The jobs were filled by illegal immigrants. With all of that being said, I want to give you a very positive answer. We're going to win this election. We're going to turn this country around. We're going to become an unbelievable growth country. And your boy is going to have the greatest job. And you want to have a lot of choice with jobs. You know, you want them to go up and they get up and they, it's hard to believe I have that the way I get treated. But I look forward to every day because we're going to make America great again. So I really do. I look forward to it.
That's right.
But we're going to create a lot of jobs. We're going to create. Does he want to stay here? Or does he want to go to a different state or anything? Yeah, someplace in the Midwest. But this is a good place to stay, right? Wisconsin. So we'll be creating tremendous jobs for our country, and we're also turning away. You know, we're going to be closing the border, really closing it. By the way, did you see? So Kamala was for defunding the police. She was for open borders. She was for everything that you're not against. I could go through 14 different. She's changed on every single one of them. In fact, I think we should see the man in the red hat and the beautiful woman in the red hat says, "Make America Great Again." Perhaps we should give Kamala a "Make America Great Again" hat, right? But the problem is, that's not her belief. Her belief is open borders. Her belief is getting rid of Social Security. Her belief is doing all of these plans like for health insurance, where you have one big government-run mess. And if you have private plans, a lot of the people in this room have private plans. They're incredible plans. They worked hard to get those plans, and that's what they want. But with her, she wants to have, it's really a communist type of government. And I just saw her, Tulsi, she was sitting behind a desk doing this interview, and I said, "Dana Bash, you could make yourself big tonight. All you have to do is be fair." I haven't seen the questions, but they gave out a sample. In fact, she's going to be on later on tonight with a taped. It was a taped. We're doing it live. Why are we doing it live and she's doing it taped? But
that's right. He's real.
But she was sitting behind that desk, this massive desk, and she didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi of China. I don't see her with Kim Jong-un like we did with Kim Jong-un. So we're going to have to see what happens. I'll tell you what, November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of this country. Will be.
Mr. President, there are a lot of people who want to feel hopeful about our future. I want to introduce you to Luke, who is one of those people.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. President.
Good-looking guy.
Thank you. My name is Luke Pulaski, and I'm a junior here at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. I'll be voting for the first time in November, and I'm researching each candidate. I have two questions for you. First, as I've been living on my own and buying my own gas and groceries, I have noticed that everything has become more expensive. For me personally, I try to eat healthy and stay lean. A pound of meat has gone from $4 to almost $7. I also would like to buy a home someday, but that seems just impossible now. What's your plan to make life more affordable and bring down inflation for someone like me?
Very good, thank you. Good. It's probably the question I get most. You know, they say you're going to vote with your stomach. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's a little bit true. And groceries, food has gone up at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We've never seen anything like it, 50, 60, 70%. You take a look at bacon and some of these products, and some people don't eat bacon anymore. And we are going to get the energy prices down. When we get energy down, you know, this was caused by their horrible energy wind. They want wind all over the place. But when it doesn't blow, we have a little problem. This was caused by energy. This was really caused by energy and also their unbelievable spending. They're spending us out of wealth, actually. They're taking our wealth away. But it was caused by energy. And what they've done is they started cutting way back. We were in third place. When I left, we were by far in first place, beating Russia, beating Saudi Arabia. And we were going to dominate to a level that we've never seen before. And then we had a bad election. I'll be very nice. I'm supposed to be nice when I talk about the election, because everybody's afraid to talk about, oh, please, sir, don't talk about the election, please. You know, if you can't talk about a bad election, you really don't have a democracy if you think about it, right? But what they did, Tulsi, is they took back the oil production. The oil started going crazy. That started the inflation. Then they went back. They said, go back to where Trump was. The problem is that we would have been 3 times that level right now. We would have been so dominant over Russia and Saudi Arabia. Look, Saudi Arabia, Russia, a lot of oil. We would have had more. You know, we had something in Alaska, Anwar, that I created. I mean, Ronald Reagan wanted it. You remember? Ronald Reagan wanted it. They all wanted it. And I got it approved. Nobody was able to get it approved. I got it approved. And the first week in office, they turned it back. They said, no, it's the biggest site possibly in the world. Could be bigger than Saudi Arabia. Well, we're going to start that up. We're going to become the energy capital of the world. We're going to pay down our debt, and we're going to reduce your taxes still further. And your groceries are going to come tumbling down, and your interest rates are going to be tumbling down. And then you're going to go out, you're going to buy a beautiful house, okay? You're going to buy a beautiful house. That's called the American dream. The American dream. Thank you.
Mr. President, I want to ask you a question about national security, but first I think it's important to point out what Luke is talking about, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of housing, mortgages, rent, everything has gone up. Kamala Harris's plan that she has announced is government price controls. And I think it's important to touch on, you just laid out your plan. What's going to happen if Kamala Harris institutes price controls?
So that's a communist plan. It's never worked. And it's been tried by others. Believe it or not, Richard Nixon tried it. A lot of people tried it. It's been tried many times, and it always leads to the same failure. Tremendous inflation, lack of product, you don't have anything, the stores are not stocked, it has never worked. It's called control. They want control. And, you know, it's been so often. And everybody that comes in, they say it sort of sounds great. We're going to go price control. Actually, when she announced it, she got absolutely slaughtered by even Democrats because it doesn't work. It's a known loser. So now she doesn't talk about it. Do you notice she doesn't talk about climate change anymore? She's not talking about it. You know why? Because people don't want to hear it. They want to live a good life. They want to live a life. They don't want to stop your industry with climate change. They used to call it different things, global warming. Remember? That wasn't working because it was getting a little bit cooler. So they said, what are we going to do? We'll call it global cooling. No. So they came up with the words climate change because that takes care of everything. Climate change. The climate's changing, but according to them, we're all going to be gone in about, what do we have, 3 years left? They had 12 years, remember? So in about 3 years, let me tell you, we do have a problem, though. It's climate change, but a different kind of climate change. It's called nuclear global warming. We can say that's global warming. And if we don't have a smart president, you know, you have 5 nations now with pretty massive nuclear power. Some have very massive, including us and Russia. China's behind, way behind, but within 4 or 5 years they'll catch up, and we don't want them to catch up. Look, the biggest problem, in my opinion, the biggest problem
Our country has the biggest problem the world has is nuclear weapons. They are a destructive force, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before, and we have to make sure they're never used. We have to make sure it's not going to happen.
You're exactly right. You brought up Ronald Reagan already. Ronald Reagan famously said, "A nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought." And I think it's interesting you talked about climate change, Mr. President. The Democrats and Kamala Harris, they were quick to talk about how climate change is an existential threat. But what they're not talking about is the existential threat of nuclear war and World War III, which is exactly where we sit today because of the warmongers and their puppets, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And they don't want to talk about it because the consequence of where they have taken all of us, as the American people and the world, is economic hardship around the world, a destruction of our economic well-being, and an annihilation of humanity, our families, our kids, our communities around the world. There was a recent poll that YouGov did that pointed out over 60% of Americans feel that World War III and nuclear war is going to happen within 5 to 10 years. And when I heard that, I felt so sad because they're at a point where they feel like this outcome, the annihilation of the world, is inevitable. So I wanted to ask you about this because it's important that people understand what kind of leadership you bring, what you will do to stop this slide towards nuclear war and World War III so that we can feel hopeful again.
Well, thank you. So, Viktor Orban, a very strong leader from Hungary, Prime Minister of Hungary, they asked him recently about what's the problem in the world. A few years ago, during my term, we didn't have Israel being attacked. We didn't have Russia attacking Ukraine. And they asked him, why is it so bad now? The Middle East is on fire. So many places are on fire, and there are plenty places that could very well and very quickly catch on. What's the problem? He said, you have to bring Trump back as president of the United States. You will have no problem. He single-handedly kept things, and it's true. And I could do it with telephone calls by being smart. But literally, he said, you have to bring Trump back. Now, he used a term I wouldn't use. He said everybody was afraid of Trump. You know who was afraid of Trump? They said China was afraid of Trump. Russia was afraid of Trump. They were all, and I don't want to say that. I will say this. They respected me and they respected our nation. They don't respect our nation anymore. They don't respect our nation anymore. Think of it. What would the world be like if Russia didn't do what they did, and they would have never done it? I used to speak to Putin about it. I had a very good relationship. No chance. You know what happened, I think, Afghanistan, when he saw the horrible leadership that we displayed in Afghanistan, I think he said, wow, this is a time to go in, because I wasn't there. He would have never done it if I was president, and Israel would have never been attacked. Think of it. What would this world be like? You wouldn't have had that disaster. And it wasn't leaving Afghanistan. And they should have kept Bagram. That's the big air base. It's 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. They didn't keep it. You know who occupies it now, Tulsi? China occupies it. So we have, if you have the right president, and we don't right now, do we even have a president? He just came in. Think of it. He just came in from wherever the hell he went. You know, there was a coup. He just doesn't know it yet. But there was a coup. How about that? He got 14. I'm not a fan of his. He was the worst president. But,
You're not?
But think of this. He got 14 million votes. She was the first one to leave, you know. Kamala was the first one to quit. She never made it to the first state in the primaries, which was Iowa. Never even came close. Other people did, but she never even came close. And all of a sudden, she was picked. And she's now running for president. And look, it just started, really. It just really started. The polls have us up here. We're up in this. We're up in states, but it's close. It's close. It's close. And you know they cheat like hell, so we don't want to have it too close. But we have, because we have to win this. We're not going to have a country. But with him, I was so far up. We had a thing called, how did he do in the debate? Did you think he did well? Not too good. No, they wanted to have a debate. I said, okay, it's a little bit early, isn't it? I was trying to talk them out. I said, well, it's a little early for a debate, right? And they said, well, I think we'd like to do it. And that was not a good debate for them. That was not a good debate. So that was the beginning of the end for him. And they started looking. But they picked a woman that had absolutely no votes. She got no votes. And now she's running. So when you say threat to democracy, they are a threat to democracy. I'm not a threat to democracy. I'm not a threat. Thank you.
Mr. President, crime and the rise of crime is on the minds of a lot of people. I want to call on Danielle here, who has a question for you.
Hi, Danielle. Well, you need, and you get a lot of those questions from Minnesota. But you get a lot of those questions because Minnesota, I mean, they picked this guy. He is weird. Right? He's weird. I'm not weird. He's weird. No, he's a weird guy. He's a weird dude. You know, see, they come up with sound bites. They always have sound bites. And one of the things is that J.D. and I are weird. That guy is so straight. J.D. is he's doing a great job, smart, top student, great guy. And he's not weird, and I'm not weird. I mean, we're a lot of things. We're not weird, I will tell you. But that guy is weird, don't you think? You know, he signed for, and this is, who would think that this is even happening in our country with men playing in women's sports and all of this? But he has it at a level that nobody can believe. A bill that every boy's bathroom will have tampons. Okay. Hence his name, Tampon Tim. But think of it. Think of it. And you know, on the question of abortion, he is the one. Abortion in the 9th month. And if the baby in Minnesota, and I'd love to win Minnesota because those people aren't digging this guy. They're not digging this guy. But think of this. 6 states, Minnesota's one of them. If the baby is born, you're allowed to execute the baby think of that, after birth in Minnesota, you're allowed to execute. And you remember the former governor, not the current governor, who's terrific, Len Youngkin. We're going to win maybe with Virginia. We could do that. But the former governor, and he said, you sit the mother down and the father down. You sit them down and you talk. And the baby is born and you make a decision what to do. He meant, do you execute the baby after birth? And according to what they have passed and legislation, in Minnesota, they're allowed to execute the baby after birth. And this guy is a participant. And that's why she picked him, because she is, in fact, a Marxist/communist. Remember, I'd say all the time, our country will never be socialist, right? We will not have a socialist. Well, I was right. We skipped socialism. We went to communism. This woman has to be stopped.
Mr. President, we have time for one final question. I don't know if we can get a mic to Bernardo. He's got an important question, given very soon we will be honoring the anniversary of September 11th and all of the lives that were lost on that tragic day and that tragic attack where we were attacked by radical Islamist terrorists. And Bernardo wanted to share his thoughts and had a question for you on this.
Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Bernardo. I'm a voter here in Wisconsin, live in the wonderful La Crosse County here. And I'm also a father of 8. I have 7 here with me. And it's the anniversary of 9/11 is coming up. I'm concerned that we're more vulnerable now than ever. And we have a Democrat nominee who doesn't even want to say the words, says we shouldn't say the words, radical Islamic terror. How are we going to protect America from a terrorist attack?
First of all, it's a great question. And, you know, we have radical Islamists pouring into our country along with everybody else right now. They're coming in at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We kept them out. We had 1 year where Border Patrol put down, it was, I believe, 2019, where they, and I don't believe this, I don't believe it's right, but I'll take it. They said 0 came in 20, that was my term, 0. Now we have thousands. I'd like to say that was true. It's probably not, because I can't imagine that. But we were very tough on that. Now they have thousands and thousands coming in, along with the prisoners and along with the crime. And remember, a lot of these countries like Venezuela, their crime is way down because they've moved their criminals into our country. It's not even believable. But your question on Islamists and all of the jihad and all of the things that they talk about, they have to respect your country. They have to respect your leader. You know, I had no radical Islam crime for 4 years, and I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to, I talked about it after, but I didn't want to talk about it during. I don't want to say like, I had absolutely, and the next day you get hit. But we had none, 4 years of it, because they respected your president, they respected your country, and they have to, we have to bring back that level of respect, and we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And we're not letting the wrong people into our country. Okay, thank you very much. Great question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know you have run out of time here, but thank you for having this conversation with the people of Wisconsin and people across the country who are watching and concerned about these very same issues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you
everyone,
much.
for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Vote. Vote. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Aloha. Thank you so much. It is such an honor and a privilege to join all of you here tonight. My fellow Americans and patriots who love our country and are committed to saving her. And historic opportunity before us. Americans coming together in the way that our founders envisioned. We may not agree on every single issue, neither did our founding fathers, but they came together around the values and principles that are most important as we must do in this election. Those principles of freedom and the right of every single American to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, I joined the Democratic Party over 20 years ago. I was 21 years old in Hawaii, and at that time I saw a party
that was the big tent party. It welcomed people from all different backgrounds, different views, celebrated free speech, and actually defended those whose speech was being attacked, even if they disagreed with their views. It was a party that fought for the little guy, a party that fought for the plantation workers back in Hawaii. It was a party that stood up for the little guy and represented our values of freedom and liberty in America. You fast forward to where we are today. I left the Democrat Party because now it stands for the exact opposite of all of those things. I'm proud to endorse Donald Trump in this election because he is our best hope. He is our best hope to bring about historic transformational change, to stop the censorship of free speech in America, to stop the weaponization of our law enforcement and Department of Justice against everyday Americans, including first and foremost Donald Trump. I never would have imagined as an American and as a soldier that we would live in a country in my lifetime where we would feel like we have to self-censor what we say, that we couldn't criticize our own government for fear of them labeling us as a domestic terrorist. But this is the country that we live in. The very next day after I did an interview with Laura Ingraham on Fox News, and I talked about how dangerous Kamala Harris would be as our president and commander-in-chief, I was added to a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Shortly after, an FBI agent named Steve Friend blew the whistle on how the FBI agents were being used essentially as the Democrats' police force to go after their political opponents. They basically took away his job, doxed him, exposed his medical records publicly. I spoke with him today, and he is unemployed and unemployable because of what the FBI did to him. We are just two of many who are experiencing the political retaliation under the Harris-Biden administration. In America, we cannot allow that to stand. We are closer to the brink of World War III and nuclear war today than we ever have been before, directly because of the Harris-Biden administration's foreign policy. I've spoken with President Trump about this and heard and felt his commitment to walk us back from the brink and do all that he can to make it so that we don't have to live in fear of a nuclear Armageddon. Too many Americans are struggling just to afford the basic necessities of life. No matter how many times we've heard Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over these last 4 years tout and celebrate how Bidenomics has been great for America, it's really a slap in the face to Americans who are struggling just to pay the bills. It's almost as though they're out of touch with the reality that the American people are living all across the country. It's almost as though they're speaking from an ivory tower, saying how great they are and patting themselves on the back, while people are struggling for crumbs on the streets. This election isn't really about Democrats versus Republicans. This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about choosing, we the people choosing our government, and the choice is between freedom versus tyranny. The choice is between our ability to live and thrive in a peaceful and prosperous society, or to live in a constant state of war and economic hardship. Our founding fathers said that our government only exists with the consent of the governed. It's up to us to save our country. It's up to us to save our world. Our best hope to do that in this election is doing all we can, not only to vote for Donald Trump, but to make sure your friends and family do the same. This is a must-win state in Nevada. And our mission we have a no-fail mission before us, every single one of us as Americans who cherish peace and freedom and who love our country to save our country, and we do this on November 5th. Thank you all so much for your support and for all that you're doing. Aloha. Thank you.
She just had so much common sense. You know, we're the party of common sense. I like to say it because it's true. Like, we don't want men playing in women's sports. We want to have borders. We want to have fair elections. You know, little things like that, common sense, right? But she's here tonight, and I'm going to just ask her to come up and say a couple of words. Tulsi Gabbard.
Aloha. You know, I was a Democrat for over 20 years. Today's Democrat, thank you. Today's Democrat Party is completely unrecognizable, which points to the clear choice that we have in this election today. When you look at the party of Kamala Harris, for example, she is anti-freedom, she is pro-censorship, she is pro-open borders, and she is pro-war. Without even pretending to care about peace, as President Trump talked about, she has shamelessly embraced the endorsement and support of warmongers like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney and others who care more about power and feeding the military-industrial complex than they care about you, the American people, and peace. President Trump has pledged to end wars, not start them. And this is why, in the eyes of the Kamala Harris-Dick Cheney Democrat Party, they will do everything possible to try to destroy him. You'll see how they have weaponized the federal government. They have weaponized law enforcement, the Department of Justice. They have done everything possible to try to silence him, to try to remove him from the ballot, so we the people don't even have the choice to who we want to vote for. Why have they done this? Because this man has the courage to take them on and root out the deep rot of corruption in the swamp in Washington. Now, voters have made their voices heard loud and clear, not once, not twice, but 3 times in the last 3 presidential elections, nominating this man to be the Republican nominee for president because of his commitment to these fundamental American principles of freedom and peace and prosperity. USA. Now, to those of you here or those watching at home who are independent-minded people like myself, who love our country and are committed to the Constitution and to freedom, the Democrat Party has no home for people like us. But we do have a home in the Republican Party where we are welcomed with open arms by President Trump and so many of you who love our country. And it is because of my love for our country, and specifically because of the leadership that President Trump has brought to transform the Republican Party and bring it back to the party of the people and the party of peace, that I'm proud to stand here with you today, President Trump, and announce that I'm joining the Republican Party.
I'm joining the party of the people, the party of equality, the party that was founded to fight against and end slavery in this country. It is the party of common sense and the party that is led by a president who has the courage and strength to fight for peace. So, as we stand here today, we have 14 days until the most historic election of our lives. And my message to my fellow Americans, regardless of your political affiliation, now is the time for us to stand together to save our country. There is nothing less than that that's on the line. A vote for President Trump is a vote for a big open tent party that welcomes people from all backgrounds and all walks of life. A vote for President Trump is a vote to express our deep love for our country and our appreciation for our God-given rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. A vote for President Trump is a vote for secure borders and safe communities, and a vote for President Trump is a vote for peace here in America and around the world. I'm looking forward to casting my vote for President Trump because you are our best and only hope in this election to lead our country toward a future where every one of us can live in a truly free, peaceful, and prosperous nation. Every single vote will count. This is our opportunity to vote for freedom, to vote for peace, to vote for America, and vote for President Trump to go back to the White House and make America great again. Thank you so much.
I didn't know that. Thank you very much. Tulsi, that's great. Look at that. You know, we do. I don't know if you know, we spend more money by far than any other nation. But we have more chronic health problems also than any nation. More childhood diseases than we did just a generation ago. Millions of Americans are realizing that something is wrong. By getting this fixed, not only will we have healthier families, we will save trillions and trillions of dollars and bring down the cost of health care. With us tonight is the man who's going to help us get it all straightened out, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr.
We have 1,000 chemicals in our food that are illegal in Europe. But the problem is not from those chemicals. The big problem is corruption in our federal agencies. And these agencies are now owned by big pharma, by big food, and big agriculture. Don't you want a president who's going to get the chemicals out of our food? And don't you want a president who's going to get the corruption out of Washington, D.C.? And don't we deserve a president of the United States that's going to make America healthy again?
Thank you, Bobby. Nobody gets a standing ovation like that. What's going on over here? That's great, Bobby. Great. Thank you. Thank you. And as you know, Bobby's great mother, she was a great woman, Ethel, passed away, so our regards and condolences to the family. Thank you, Bobby. Our movement is bringing together Americans of all backgrounds who believe in freedom, democracy, and a thing called common sense. Much of it's common sense. Conservative, liberal, it's common sense. Let me also call up two other incredible patriots who want to help save our incredible country. Former Democrat presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard. And, by the way, she just became a Republican. And a great man, a brilliant person, and a true character, Tucker Carlson.
Something? I think Donald Trump's singular contribution to this country and the world is by his presence exposing a lot of things a lot of us believed as fraudulent, as lies. It's changed my life watching it. But the single biggest lie that Donald Trump has exposed is that this is a functional democracy, when in fact, it's a country oppressed by a small group of its unhappiest citizens for their own benefit. And the promise of this campaign is that Donald Trump will return this country to its owners. And that's its population, that's its people, that's its citizens. And I pray fervently that that happens. I mean it. That's why I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
We have seen from the very beginning how much President Trump has been attacked, smeared, censored, the government weaponized against a candidate for president and a former president in ways that have never been seen in our country before. The reason why this has happened is because he is the sole person who has had the courage to stand up against the uniparty war machine in Washington and have the audacity to call for peace and an end to war. While he has challenged the swamp creatures in Washington, all of you have resoundingly nominated him for president 3 times in the last 3 presidential elections. We know whose side he stands on. He stands on the side of the people. He stands on the side of peace and prosperity and freedom for all Americans. It's why I'm proud to stand with President Trump and why we, the people, must vote to send him back to the White House and make America great again.
Great people.
Thank you so much. Aloha. Talapalava. Mabuhay. It is such a beautiful sight and an amazing feeling to be here to join all of you on this special night. We have people here from all different backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, places we grew up, experiences that we had, all of us coming together, united by our love of this great country. We are united by our love for each other as fellow Americans.
We see each other as children of God and recognize that as we come together, we may disagree on some things, but we appreciate our fundamental God-given rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. This is why we stand here together tonight, 12 days before the most historic and important election of our lives, united for change. There is a very clear choice in this election. I am doing all that I can to help elect President Trump because there is nothing short of our freedom and our future on the line. We've seen some of the most egregious and brazen abuses of power coming from the Harris-Biden administration than we've ever seen in our country, certainly in my lifetime. To see a person in Kamala Harris who is telling the American people that she believes in free speech, that her campaign is about freedom, and yet fundamentally she does not believe in our right to free speech. She doesn't believe in our right to gather in places like this and express ourselves. She doesn't believe in our right that is fundamental to the First Amendment to criticize our own government. We saw just recently in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene's disaster wreaked on the people of Western North Carolina and 5 other states. Those of us had some things to say on behalf of our fellow Americans about how they have been failed by our government during their most dire time of need. And if you listen to the White House, if you listen to Joe Biden and you listen to Kamala Harris, they criticized us and called us dangerous for spreading misinformation. That is what is at the core of what I view as the dangerous threat to our freedom and our democracy, because it's in dictatorships and authoritarian governments where those in power view those who criticize them as dangerous. There is no one they have targeted more than President Donald J. Trump. And there's a reason for that. Because they recognize that he doesn't bend the knee or kiss the ring in the establishment of Washington, D.C. They recognize that he brings the voices of the people of this country who are frustrated and sick and tired of being forgotten and left behind by those in power. They recognize that President Trump is the only Republican who has had the courage to stand up to the uniparty of war in Washington and state over and over his commitment for peace. This is why they're throwing everything they possibly can at him and why they see him as the greatest threat. We see how they try to silence and censor those of us who dare to criticize them, saying that we are spreading misinformation or disinformation and therefore must be censored. How can we trust a person to uphold her oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States who does not believe in the First Amendment? We can't. Exactly. How can we trust a person to uphold her oath to the Constitution who doesn't believe in the Second Amendment and our right to protect our loved ones? How do we trust someone in the presidency to uphold the rule of law when over the last 4 years Kamala Harris has allowed open borders and 20 million plus people in who their very first act was to break our laws? We cannot allow ourselves or our friends to fall for the lies and the propaganda. She's working hand in glove with the mainstream media and big tech, doing all that they can to erase the past and try to make us believe that this new picture is somehow true. They're so afraid, and they're doing all of this because they see that a free people in a free country are the greatest threat to their power. That's us. We must be vigilant. We the people is a call to action. We need to save our country, and President Trump needs every one of us to stand with him in making that possible. This is a no-fail mission we have before us. Yes, your vote is critical, but you got to bring 10 people with you to make sure that our voices are heard in the swamps of Washington and that Donald Trump goes back to the White House to make America great again and start to clean that house. Now, President Trump said something last night when we were in Georgia that really struck a chord with me. He told the people there in Georgia that what he has built and what he is leading is a movement of love. Love for our country, love for our freedom, love for the American people, and the promise of getting us back towards a path of peace, freedom, and prosperity. This is why I'm supporting President Trump, and this is why we need to send him back to the White House. So I want you to join me right now, sharing all of the aloha that is in your heart, and welcome the 47th President to the United States here on stage right now. Hello, New York! Join me as I say these words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As we gather here today on this historic occasion, we stand together as proud Americans in understanding that these very rights are under attack. So we face this historic crossroads where our freedom and our future is in our hands. There's never been a more clear choice in any election in my life, and our ability to live in a truly peaceful and free and prosperous country is on the line. I love you too. And it is that love that brings us together here today, that love for freedom, that love for our country and love for each other as fellow Americans, as children of God, that compels us to take action to save our country and defend our freedom. Now, this choice that we have before us is very personal to me. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. I've served now for over 21 years. I've deployed to different war zones 3 times over that period, and I've seen the cost of war. For my brothers and sisters who paid the ultimate price, I carry their memories and their sacrifice in my heart every day. So this choice that we have before us as Americans is critical. It's important to us. It's important to those of us who serve, who have volunteered to put our lives on the line for the safety, security, and freedom of our country and our people, and it's critical to all of us. Here is the choice that we have. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, and it's a vote for war, more war, likely World War III and nuclear war. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for a man who wants to end wars, not start them, and who has demonstrated already that he has the courage and strength to stand up and fight for peace. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for open borders, where known violent criminals and Islamist terrorists are streaming across our borders, placing us at risk. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for secure borders and safe communities and a confidence that he will seek out those who seek to do us harm and get them out. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for economic hardship, high cost of living, poverty, and homelessness, and a vote for Donald Trump is a vote for economic prosperity and opportunity for every single one of us as Americans. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for censorship and a complete erosion of our fundamental and constitutional rights and freedoms. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for someone who will defend freedom and every one of our God-given rights that are enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. So the choice is ours. History will look back on us at this moment for the choice that we make. Did we choose war or peace? Did we choose poverty or prosperity? Did we choose censorship or freedom? Our freedom and our future is in our hands. We have just a few days left to complete this no-fail mission that we have before us to save our country. Nothing short of our future is on the line. So now, just as we've gathered here today in this historic place and this historic time, we will gather together all across this country, people of every race, ethnicity, religion, and creed, to stand together and defend our freedom and ensure our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now is the time for us to send Donald Trump back to the White House to be the 47th President of the United States, where we can stand together and make America great again. Thank you so much. Let's get it done. Aloha. Hey, everybody who's outside, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. What a beautiful day, huh? How many veterans we got here tonight? All right. So, I know JD served in the Marine Corps. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. So I just got to say what has to be said. The Army-Navy game's coming up. I got to say, go Army, beat Navy. All right. We'll get that one out of the way before he comes out. I know we're all here for the same reason, and I just want to thank you all so much, both for those of you who have served, but those of you who are gathered here with us tonight because we all love our country. I think throughout our lives, we understand the important responsibility, the most important responsibility that any president has is to serve as commander-in-chief. And so those of us who take that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Those of us who have been deployed to different war zones in different parts of the world as a result of the decisions made by politicians in Washington and the President and Commander-in-Chief, we really understand what's at stake. But even if you have not worn the uniform, it does not take a rocket scientist or a politician to recognize the threats that we face right now. Because of the Harris-Biden administration, we are embroiled in multiple wars in 3 different regions in the world. We're on the brink of World War III in multiple regions of the world. And according to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, we are closer to the brink of nuclear war today than we ever have been as a country, where because of the Harris-Biden administration's policies, we are all under threat. That is the reality that we face here. And so I'm grateful to be here today with Senator J.D. Vance, who personally understands why this is so important and why the choice that we are making as we go out and cast our votes, I just filled out my ballot this morning, for the next 5 days leading up to Election Day, who we choose matters. I don't know about you, but I about fell out of my seat when I saw Kamala Harris look directly into that camera during the presidential debate, standing next to President Trump, saying with great confidence and conviction that for the first time in a century, not a single active duty service member was deployed into a combat zone anywhere in the world. So she is either telling us a bold-faced lie because according to her, she's in the Situation Room with Joe Biden. She is the last person in the room before he makes any major decision on domestic or foreign policy. Oh my God is right. Or she just has no clue that there are tens of thousands of our brothers and sisters in uniform, some of who I know personally, who as we gather here tonight in Bedford are deployed into harm's way, putting their lives on the line because of the decisions and failures of this administration. This is personal. This is personal for those of us who've served and those of us who love our country and who cherish peace and freedom. We cannot allow someone who is either lying to us or who has no idea and so little care for those who are laying their lives down for our country to get anywhere near the Oval Office. So while Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are busy smearing and attacking, and Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, they are so busy calling President Trump every name in the book, accusing those of us who proudly stand in support of him and his mission to get back in the White House to save our country. They call us garbage. They call us deplorables. They call us neo-Nazis, but we are on a no-fail mission, which is why we're here tonight. They're resorting to the worst kinds of smears and attacks because they have nothing else to resort to. They have a record of failure over the last 4 years in the White House. And when you look at the facts, take away the noise, you take away the rhetoric, when you look at the facts, you have 4 years of failure on every metric under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and under President Trump's 4 years in office on the very same metrics we have 4 years of success. And that's what we need in the White House right now is President Trump and J.D. Vance to go and fix what Kamala Harris has broken. So without further ado, let's welcome your next Vice President of the United States, Senator J.D. Vance.
But look, we're thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be in Pennsylvania. We actually recorded an episode of Joe Rogan this morning, so we started out in Austin, Texas, and we're closing out.
How long was it, JD? How long were you in Rogan's
Almost
studio?
4 hours. Almost 4 hours. So I've officially done more interview time than Kamala Harris has the entire campaign just today. So we're look, driving in here, the beautiful Appalachian Mountains. I love being here. I love this part of our country. I love this part of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And in 6 short days, we're going to win, my friends, and make Donald J. Trump the next president. So with that, I'm looking forward to tonight. Tulsi, thank you for doing this. We're thrilled. Let's give another round of applause to Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we are right here at home tonight, JD, not only because we are surrounded by so many great patriots who love our country as we do, but we're also surrounded by many men and women who have worn the uniform as we have. And I'm looking forward to the conversation that we have. So we'll kick it off. First, we have David, who's got a question for you.
Hey, hello. My name is David. I'm a 3-tour Afghanistan combat veteran. Flew Apaches there.
Thank you for your service, David.
Spent a lot of time in that country. And let me just say thank you both for your service and your continued service, ma'am. And for all the other veterans that are here, too, thank you for giving me the chance. I appreciate that. If anybody's not noticed, outside the gate, or the hangar there is the Abbey Gate 13, the people that died on August the 26th, 2021. And I'm kind of saddened that there has been no accountability for that.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to know, what is President Trump going to do to help get accountability for that event?
David, I appreciate the question, and it's an important one, and thank you for your service, but most importantly, thanks to everybody, including David, for their service in this room. We're thrilled to have you, and we're thrilled to put a president back in the White House who actually respects the sacrifice of American military veterans, and that's exactly what we're going to do. You know, David, like President Trump, I've spent a lot of time with the families of the 13 brave Americans who died at Abbey Gate. And one of the things that has really affected me is the recognition that a lot of these guys, they're not mad. They're, of course, heartbroken, but they're not angry that their loved ones lost their lives, because they recognize that when you put on the uniform of the United States, sometimes that's what's happened, right? That's what a lot of people sign up for. What they're really angry about is the fact that their loved ones died and there's been no accountability for the disaster that led to their death in the first place. That's what pisses them off. They're heartbroken to have lost their kids, but they're angry that no one has paid any price for the fact that those kids died because our leadership failed to do its job. I mean, think about this. You get out of Afghanistan, and I think it was the right decision to get out of Afghanistan eventually, but you don't close down the airport before you get out. We basically turned brave Americans into TSA agents in the most dangerous, terrorism-infested area of the entire world. And frankly, we may have been lucky that only 13 Americans died. It could have been much, much higher given the chaos of the situation that was going on the ground. And not one person, not a single general, not a single Pentagon bureaucrat, not a single person who controlled how that withdrawal was conducted has faced any consequences. But I believe that the first person that we are going to fire, and there's going to be more after that, but the first person we get to fire who had a role in Abbey Gate, her name is Kamala Harris, and we're going to fire her in 6 days. But the last thing I'll say, David, is after that, after we fire Kamala Harris, we have got to get some accountability. Who made the decision to close down Bagram before we had everybody out of Afghanistan? Who made the decision to put our troops in that situation to begin with? Who made the decision to not evacuate any of our $80 billion worth of equipment before we closed up shop and left? There has to be answers when people fail. And one of the things you'll see is the media, of course, attacks Donald Trump because there are people that criticize him. And what is almost always true is that the people who are most loudly criticizing Donald J. Trump are people that he fired because they screwed up. Those are the people that are attacking him. And I think I speak for every person in this room. I'd rather have a president who fires the people who screw up than the president who protects their jobs when they screw up. And that's why we got to get new leadership.
I think that's something that President Trump understands very clearly, is that when you are a leader of any organization, you're responsible for what happens under your leadership. And President Biden, obviously, as you said, fired no one, but it shocks me even that within our military, none of these leaders did the right thing and said, you know what, we screwed up, I resign. Not a single one.
That's right. It's a very good point.
All right, next we've got a question coming from Ron. Here we go.
Hi, Senator, Congresswoman, thanks for being with us today. Appreciate it. I'm Ron, retired from the Air Force after 30 years. and Air Force. I can play my question regards armed forces recruiting and retention. Services are having difficulty making goals just now. Went through the COVID era with a mandated vaccine. Right. I know DOD discharged thousands of troops for refusal to take that vaccine. And we have a lot of young people today who are just frankly unfit to begin military service. And I know you've got a Make America Healthy plan. Could you talk a little about that and how that can address some of these issues?
Yeah, well, Ron, I'm happy to take a first stab at that question. And then, Tulsi, I'd love to hear your thoughts, too, because, of course, I think Tulsi understands as well as anybody why the military might be having recruitment challenges in the 21st century. And I think there are a couple of things going on, Ron, is number one, you hit the nail on the head. Why were we firing brave, young, and healthy Marines, soldiers, sailors, and airmen because they wouldn't take the COVID shot? We should let people make these decisions themselves, not throw them out of the military because of it. But of course, that's not just thousands of Americans who were thrown out of the military, and it was a disgrace, and Donald Trump and I have promised that we're going to offer all of those people a return to service with back pay on top of it. That's important. But Ron, think about the effect that has on morale. What does it do when you fire people for simply exercising their own judgment about what they want to put into their own body? What does that say to the next generation of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines? What does it say to their family members? Because we know, in my family, my grandma, my mamaw, had 6 grandchildren. 3 of us enlisted in the United States Marine Corps out of high school. Very often, military service is a family affair. So what we did, I think, was a massive slap in the face to our troops, but it also really, really hurt morale. And the final thing I'll say, and again, I want to hear Tulsi's views on this too, is people want to sign up for the United States military because they love their country and they want to engage in public service. They don't want to sign up in the military because of a bunch of progressive ideas. They don't want to be enforcers of one political party's dogma. They want to serve the whole United States of America. And I think unfortunately, whether it's DEI training or, you have our State Department funding progressive politics in foreign countries, like why do your tax dollars need to be funneled through the State Department to do like trans pride parades in the Czech Republic? Like, what does that have to do with the America's national interest? Even if you agree with that, and I imagine none of us do, but even if you agree with it, that has nothing to do with America's national interest. So why are our taxpayers funding that stuff? But when you do that, it makes people not want to serve their country because they're worried they're not serving the whole United States of America. They're serving Kamala Harris's radical agenda, and that's going to stop the minute Donald J. Trump becomes president.
JD, I want to go back to what you said in response to the first question that we had, with the fact that every single one of us who's here, anyone watching from home, any one of us who's raised our right hand and volunteered, the less than 1% of all Americans who volunteer to serve in our armed forces, we do so, and our families know that service and that volunteerism may require us to pay the ultimate price. And we do so willingly because of love for our country and our commitment to defending the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. What we don't sign up for is to be used as cannon fodder by politicians who are trying to fund the military-industrial complex or make themselves look tough. And so the very least that our men and women in uniform deserve, that our veterans deserve from our leadership, the president, our commander-in-chief, leaders in Congress, is to have our back.
Amen.
And so when you talk about Make America Healthy again, too often, and we all got stories. We all got stories. But too often, they make investments, say, okay, you walk in basic training. I enlisted, went to basic training at Fort Jackson, and you go through that training. You serve in the Air Force. They invest in turning civilians into warriors. Then you go and spend your time in service, and when it's time to go and you get your final DD-214 and you walk out, for a lot of folks, they feel lost because for the first time, you kind of feel alone. That you can't just go to the military hospital, or you can't, you don't have your sergeant major telling you what time to wake up and when you get to eat and when you get to sleep. And so when we look at the Veterans Affairs Department, for example, when we have our brothers and sisters who are struggling, who've gone and fought in war zones and have come home and are struggling with those internal battles, too many of them are feeling like their only choice is to take their own lives to end their pain. That means our leaders have failed our brothers and sisters. Why is it? Even at that point, they are still not able to get the care that they need. I've had friends who've gone into the VA at that moment where they felt like they had no other option. They were ready to take their own lives. They either couldn't get an appointment, or when they did walk in, they were handed a bag full of drugs.
Yep.
A bag full of drugs that made their problems worse, not better, and that didn't actually deal with the real challenges they were facing. So when we talk about what is President Trump's plan to make America healthy again look like for our men and women in uniform and for our veterans, it's investing in the person, our fellow American, from the time they join the military, throughout their time in service, making sure that they're getting the care that they need, not just drugs or Band-Aids to cover up the visible or invisible wounds. Making sure that when you go into that dining facility, you actually have healthy and nutrition options to eat, not just crap that's going to make you sick. That when you go to the doctor, they're not just going to give you pills to cover up whatever pain you are experiencing. And that when it comes time to lay down the uniform, when your service is complete, that you're able to go, as with President Trump's accomplishment in passing the Choice Act, that you're able to go to the provider of your choice, whether that be at the VA or in your local doctor's office, and get the care that you need. And I just want to close by sharing a personal story because I experienced what a difference this made in my own personal life. I was a member of Congress representing Hawaii. It was the 2nd Congressional District, the rural parts of the state. And there was a Vietnam veteran named Andrew Jamila. He'd been awesome. He was a local leader. He was like the unofficial mayor of his hometown of Waimanalo on the island of Oahu. He called me up one day. Thank God he had my personal cell phone number. And he said, Tulsi, I just had a heart attack, and I'm at the hospital down the street. We live like 20 minutes from each other. I'm at the hospital down the street. They tell me if they can't have open heart surgery right now, then I may not survive. The VA hospital, which was about 40 minutes drive over the mountains to the other side of the island, said they would not cover this surgery that would save his life, that he had to get into an ambulance and take that 40-minute drive to get to the VA. His doctor said, you might not make it, Andrew. You might not survive. And so thankfully I was able to help him, and it was because of the Choice Act that he was able to get the care that he needed, that he survived that heart attack and was able to live another day.
It's awesome.
Where is Cindy at? Our next question is coming from Cindy. Thank you.
Welcome to Bedford County. I want to thank you for recognizing the veterans in the audience and our concerns. Thank you both for your service then. Thank you for your service now, as they are both equally important. When my dad, who I'm very proud of, came home from Vietnam, he wasn't educated on the health benefits and services that he earned and was entitled to. When I got out of the Marine Corps in 1996, I was not educated on the health benefits and services I earned and was entitled to. When my nephews, whom I am also very proud of, got out of the military in the mid-2000s, they were not educated on the benefits that they earned and was entitled to. The first time I registered and voted was for President Trump because we needed change. We still need change. What will you and your administration do to help educate the veterans on the health benefits and services they've earned and health benefits they are entitled to? Semper Fi, thank you.
Well, Cindy, Semper Fi, and thank you for the question, and thank you for your, not just your service, but your whole family's service. That's an amazing testament to the American tradition of military service. But I actually have a somewhat similar story, though luckily it didn't have the same personal consequence for me. You know, when I got out of the Marine Corps in 2007, I went straight to Ohio State University. Don't hold it against me. I know we're in Pennsylvania. And, you know, I signed up for a student health plan, and it was a lot of money. Right, and I didn't have anybody helping me out. I was on Pell Grants, and you know things were pretty tight because I was, you know, I didn't come from a family of means. I didn't come from a family of money, and I had no idea that because of a law that had been passed while I was in the Marine Corps, that I could get free health care through the VA. I think it was for 5 years after I got out of the United States Marine Corps, and I had no idea. And so I spent hundreds of dollars on health insurance premiums until somebody kind of just said, hey, why don't you go to the VA and get health care service? And I said, I don't think I'm allowed to. And they said, I know that you are. And that's what changed that for me and saved me probably thousands of dollars of health care expenses over the next few years. And I think that what we have to do is the Veterans Administration needs to cooperate with Department of Defense and make sure that whether it's the last month or the last week, when folks are getting out of active military service, they need to be educated about what the services that are available so they can take advantage of what they're owed by their own government. That's got to change. And, you know, to Tulsi's point, this is really about keeping the commitments that American taxpayers and the American nation makes to its people who put on the uniform and offer to risk it all for our shared freedom and certainly for our shared prosperity as a country. Here's another thing that's very unusual to me is you've got a lot of Americans right now who are veterans who are sleeping on park benches, who are sleeping under bridges, who don't have access to the care that they need. Well, my attitude is if the politicians and the Pentagon bureaucrats want to send people off to war, they ought to keep their commitments to people when those folks come home from war. We've got to stop this. We just have to do better.
What you just said, JD, I think is so central to the changes that we need to make in a very simple thing of making it so that the DOD and the VA work together.
That's right.
A lot of people, those of us who have gone through this know, but the fact that you spend your time in service, and whether you've deployed or not, you've got a probably pretty thick medical record. The VA has no access to your DOD medical records. No access. So you got to go and bring pieces of paper, and they got to literally scan those pieces of paper into a different database. When I first got to Congress, I asked why. Like, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense. I asked for a printout of every single veteran in my district so that I could help inform them of the services that were available to them. They literally printed out on an old dot matrix printer, you know, with the holes on the edges with the perforated lines, and gave me this huge stack. But the reason why they said that the two systems don't talk to each other was because of some government contract that someone signed.
Wow.
President Trump's a problem solver. I guarantee you he'll find a way to solve this problem.
That's exactly right.
All right, next up, we have Julie.
Hello, Senator, Colonel. I'm a retired United States Army soldier. Since I've left service, I've continued my education by obtaining a master's degree in counseling as well as a PhD in criminal justice. So according to the research, 14% of our homeless population in America are veterans.
Wow.
Well, that number includes 7% of an increase just in the last 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration. Our veterans watch as the current administration puts illegal migrants up in hotels. What will you do to change that policy, and will you help find solutions for those homeless veterans?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Well, thank you, Julie. And here's a basic principle that I think that we could do on practically day one of the Trump administration. We could say that no American tax dollars go to housing illegal immigrants while veterans are homeless in the United States of America. Why? Again, to me, this is about duties and obligations, right? Veterans understand duties and obligations as well as anybody. We make a sacred compact between our nation's veterans. We say we're going to send you off to places, sometimes places, to Tulsi's point, that you never should have been sent to in the first place. But when you come home, there are certain obligations we're going to meet. And God forbid, if you don't come home, we're going to meet those obligations to your family. The fact that we have so many people who did their end of the bargain and the government doesn't do its end of the bargain is a scandal, and it needs to stop on day one of the Trump administration. It's so unacceptable. But, you know, Julie, your point drives home a related point here, which is that, or your question drives home a related point, which is that veterans are very much members of the community, and veterans are affected by the same policies and the same problems that everybody else is, right? Sometimes they're affected more significantly, sometimes a little less significantly. But why do we have 14% of our homeless population who are veterans, and why have we seen such a significant increase? Because housing has gotten totally unaffordable over the last 4 years. There is a direct connection between increased housing costs and increased homelessness. I believe in the state of Pennsylvania, housing costs have increased by about 40% just since Kamala Harris became the Vice President of the United States. So if we want to fix the veterans' homelessness problem, let's make housing more affordable for all America's citizens, and let's do it starting immediately. And I know we're focused on veterans issues, and I don't want to derail this too much, but it's very important to talk about the three obvious things that we should be doing to make housing more affordable. Number one, we should be doing more home building in the United States of America. Think about this. We are descendants of people who built rockets that flew to the moon, and all they had was pocket calculators and slide rules. And thanks to government policy, we don't build enough houses to house American citizens. What is this? 60 years ago, we built rockets that went to the moon. Now we don't build enough houses for American citizens. If we got rid of some of the ridiculous regulations out there, we'd create a lot of prosperity in the construction industry. We'd also build a lot more homes for American citizens. Number two, we've got to pursue common sense economic policies that lower mortgage interest rates so that people can afford to borrow and get into a home in the first place. And here's the final thing, and it goes back to Julie's point about illegal immigration. It doesn't matter how many homes we build. If we allow millions upon millions of people who don't have the legal right to be here to go into houses that ought by right go to American citizens, we are going to have a housing crisis. This very simple principle, and it's going to benefit veterans most of all, but it's going to benefit everybody, is American homes should go to American citizens, not to people who don't have the right to be here.
All right, our next question is going to come from Jesse.
I promise I'm standing up. My name's Jessie. I am a proud Puerto Rican, first and foremost, Army veteran, served as a drill sergeant. I've lived in Pennsylvania for over 20 years now, and I'm proud to call Pennsylvania home. So with all of that being said, I also have a almost 17-year-old son who's looking to join the military. He would love to go to an academy. So my husband and I are getting ready to send him off to do something like this. As someone who served, I deeply value the importance of peace and stability. In President Trump's first term, he showed a willingness to take bold steps by engaging with leaders across the world to promote peace. Given the current global landscape, can we expect the same level of commitment, proactivity, and diplomacy from him if reelected, especially given that I am now sending my son?
Yes, ma'am. So first, let me say a couple things. So you said your son might try to apply to an academy. Is that next year? Okay, so the rules are if you need to go to an academy, you need a letter of recommendation from either your senator or your congressman or from the vice president. And I'll say that while I don't know the Pennsylvania senators especially well, if all goes according to plan, I might know a guy who could help with that letter in 6 days. So please reach out to us. No promises, but reach out to us. But I'm so thrilled to hear about your background because I'm actually going to see him tomorrow at an event that we're doing in North Carolina. One of my best buddies in the Marine Corps was a Puerto Rican guy who grew up in the Bronx. You grew up in the Bronx too? Oh, that's awesome. Well, he grew up in just incredibly tough circumstances. I mean, he grew up in a very, very poor family. He was the best Marine that I ever served with. He's just a great, great guy, and I'm going to see him tomorrow. I'm very excited about it. But to answer your question, we are absolutely going to engage in robust diplomacy, robust statecraft. And one of the things I love about Donald J. Trump is, yes, sometimes there are problems in the world that require a military response. Sometimes there are problems in the world that require smart diplomacy, and you've got to use both if you want to solve the American people's problems overseas. You can't just send everybody off to war. That doesn't keep our trust with our veterans, and it sure as hell doesn't honor our commitment to the people who put on the uniform if we send them to be the policemen of the world instead of honoring their service and honoring their sacrifice by treating it as the precious resource that it is. So yes, we will absolutely be very careful about how we engage in foreign diplomacy. And this is, one of the things that, I imagine most of us are Republicans, or at least are going to vote for President Trump. I know we've got a lot of Democrats and independents in the audience too, including, of course, our great friend up here. And, one of the things that my fellow Republicans will say about Donald Trump's foreign policy is that it was strong, that weakness invites aggression. And that's right. I do think that Kamala Harris's weakness has invited aggression, but I actually think that's only half of the equation, because Donald Trump's foreign policy wasn't just strong, it was also smart. It recognized that sometimes you have to talk to people, sometimes even people you don't necessarily like or agree with, but you've got to engage in smart diplomacy, and that is sometimes how you keep a war from starting in the first place.
I was a Democrat serving in Congress when President Trump was elected.
Yep.
And one of the things that he did very early on in his term of office was really, really important to the people of Hawaii, my home state. As you know, we're the most remote island chain in the world. We are very well within North Korea's proximity of their intercontinental ballistic missiles. At that time, they were still developing their nuclear capability. They are much farther along today than they were back then. But we had a missile scare where we thought early one morning on a Saturday in 2017, every single cell phone went off with an alert that said ballistic missile incoming to Hawaii. You remember this?
I remember this. This was a big news story at the time.
It was massive for residents and tourists alike. People sitting on the beach in Waikiki watching the sunrise, and their phone goes off and it says ballistic missile incoming to Hawaii. Seek shelter immediately. This is not a test. And it's you can't really imagine what that is like until you experience it.
They were just trying to prepare you in case Kamala Harris became president. That's what's going to happen if that nightmare ever becomes real.
But we went through. I mean, people sitting on the beach. They're like, where do I go to find shelter? That where here, as if we got that alert tonight, where would we go to find shelter? If we got an alert that Putin was launching a nuclear weapon, where would we go? There is no shelter to be found. And it was a huge wake-up call to realize that fact and that reality. And so when President Trump chose to go and meet with Kim Jong-un, the first president ever to step into North Korea at the DMZ, as a Democrat in Congress, I was loud and proud to say this is the kind of leadership that we need, because President Obama, in the previous 4 years, I had been urging them. I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, urging them to do this, de-escalate tensions, try to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. President Obama refused to do it because he said he didn't want to reward Kim Jong-un with a meeting. So, JD, I'm just wondering if you can talk about how, you know, there are critics of President Trump who say that his foreign policy is isolationist.
Yep.
Talk about and tell us why they're wrong.
Well, they're wrong in part because of exactly what you just said. You know, it's funny. The people who have been wrong about every foreign policy disaster for the last 30 years are the very same people who say that it's terrible to engage in diplomacy. And it's interesting that they were wrong about, remember how they said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and remember how they said that it was going to be really easy to turn Iraq into a, American-style democracy, and they said it was going to be really easy to turn Afghanistan into a Western liberal society, and of course, that became a 20-year quagmire. My attitude is, after 20 years of being wrong about everything, why don't these people at least acquire some humility and shut up and stop trying to tell us what to do with the foreign policy in the United States of America? And, the idea that somehow showing up in North Korea and having a conversation is going to reward somebody. What we should be doing is actually having conversations with people and trying to de-escalate situations before they become massive military conflicts. And again, this goes back to the strong versus smart distinction and why both are important. You need both in an American leader. Remember how they all accused, and I've been accused of this, Tulsi's been accused of this, of course President Trump has been accused of being in bed, of colluding with Russia, and yet when George W. Bush was president, Russia invaded a sovereign country. And when Barack Obama was president, Russia invaded a sovereign country. And when Joe Biden was president, Russia invaded a sovereign country. Who was the one guy who prevented the Russians from invading a sovereign country? It was Donald J. Trump. And they never talk about that. But again, it's because he was strong. Certainly, some of the bad guys were afraid of what Donald J. Trump would do. But it was also because he was willing to communicate with people and open those diplomatic lines up in a way that prevented a hot spot from becoming a full military conflict. And Tulsi, you've probably heard the president tell his story, but it's one of my favorite stories of his time in office where, I guess Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, was trying to posture about his nuclear weapons and talk about how tough and big of a guy he was, and said, I have a little red button on my desk that will launch nuclear weapons. And President Trump said, I have a bigger red button on my desk. And I actually, this is such a profound change between the President Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, common sense view of American foreign policy and the broken consensus of the last 30 years is that we have got to recognize that the best way to advance America's interests is, yes, to build a strong military, and yes, to be willing to use it when we have to, but also to engage in diplomacy. Why have a military if you're never going to engage in diplomacy? Why always use your fellow citizens, as Tulsi said, as cannon fodder? Why not instead actually communicate from time to time? You might save the lives of your citizens and prevent a bigger disaster down the road.
That really, for me, was one of the major driving reasons why I chose to endorse President Trump. David, I'm glad you brought up the 13 who were killed at Abbey Gate. I was honored to announce my endorsement of President Trump on the 3rd anniversary of their sacrificing their lives for our country, because it is essential that every one of us as Americans always keep the memories of those who have paid that ultimate price on our hearts, and that we hold our leaders accountable. The most important responsibility the president has is to serve as our commander-in-chief. Our founders told us that the government only exists with the consent of the governed.
That's right.
We face a no-fail mission. Every one of us, a no-fail mission to save our country and save the world, and President Trump is the only choice in this election that will lead us back on that path towards peace, freedom, and prosperity. Now, before I hand it over to JD, I just want to say that when I heard the rumor mill spurring, you hadn't been announced yet, but I heard the rumor mill spurring that President Trump was going to announce that you were his pick for vice president. My heart was happy and I felt at ease, because in the time that you have served in the U.S. Senate, while it hasn't been as long as many others who've been there for decades, you have lived an experience that many others haven't. You have seen the cost of war, and you've used that experience in your time leading in the U.S. Senate to take a stand against the military-industrial complex and for peace, and you standing shoulder to shoulder with President Trump, the rest of us can sleep peacefully at night. Thank you.
Thank you. It's kind of you. So, thank you, Tulsi. That was very kind of you to say, and most importantly, it's very kind of you to go around the country and convince people to elect Donald J. Trump the next president of the United States, and we couldn't do this without you. Thank you. You know, I always try to encourage folks to remember why we're fighting, because it's not red team versus blue team. There are a lot of Democrats, a lot of independents who are going to support this ticket, and of course we're proud to have their support. It's not even just to beat Kamala Harris, as much as I'll probably enjoy beating Kamala Harris more than any person in this room. Trust me about that. The point here is we want to beat Kamala Harris to give the American people the leadership that the American people deserve. And that's ultimately what this election is about. You know, ma'am, you asked the question earlier. I mentioned my friend who I'm going to see tomorrow, I think, assuming all the logistics work out. And think about what the Marine Corps meant to this kid that I served with. He grew up in the Bronx. He actually, as I understand it, had some drug use and even drug dealing in his past. He shows up in North Carolina at a Marine Corps base as a young kid, and again, he's the best Marine that I ever served with. In fact, I want to tell you a funny story, because he knew gang stuff, because he had grown up in such a tough neighborhood and such a tough circumstance. And we were near a big city in North Carolina. It was late at night. It was probably 2 a.m. And he pointed to some guys over in a car at a gas station. We were stopped to get gas, and he said, I think those guys are Bloods. In other words, like members of a gang. And I said, well, why do you think that they're Bloods? And he said, well, because, they're dressed a certain way. They've got a certain kind of red dress. And I think that, I'm just telling you, man, I think that they're Bloods. I grew up seeing this, and I think that's what's going on. And, I called him Squeeze. I said, all right, Squeeze, well, what would you go up and say to these guys if they were actually members of the Bloods gang? And he said, well, I'd go up to them and I'd say, what that red be like? And I said, oh, that's interesting. So what would happen, Squeeze, if I went up to those guys and said, what that red be like? And he said, I'll tell you exactly what they'd say, JD. They'd say, I'm sorry, officer, I don't know what you're talking about. And if you think about the Marine Corps, it took a guy who was raised by hillbilly grandparents from eastern Kentucky and southern Ohio and put us into the same unit with a guy who grew up around Bloods gang members from the Bronx in New York City, and it made us part of the same United Marine Corps and American team. And that is an incredible thing that our U.S. military does. But we've got to ask ourselves, is it going to keep doing that? Is the military going to serve that same important function? As Tulsi said, it takes civilians and turns them into warriors. It also takes people from every walk of life and makes them part of the same team. The former Marine Corps Commandant, General Charles Krulak, said the most important thing that the military does is it wins battles, but it also turns our young people into really proud servants of the United States of America. Is that still going to happen? Is it still going to have that same function for the United States of America if we put Kamala Harris into the Oval Office? I think the answer is no. So what we're up against and what we're fighting for is to preserve the most important and proudest traditions of the United States military, to ensure that our veterans get access to the benefits that they were promised. And the only way that is going to happen is if we fix the broken leadership in Washington, D.C., and give the American people a president that we can all be proud of. And so I want to ask you, over the next 6 days, I want every single person in this hangar to get out there and vote 10 times. The legal way. The legal way. The legal way you get out there and vote 10 times is you take yourself to the polls and you get 9 of your friends and family to join you. So with gratitude to Tulsi Gabbard, the incredible elected officials that we have here today, and most of all with gratitude to all of you for being here, we've got 6 days to go. Let's vote 10 times, and let's make Donald Trump the President of the United States. God bless you all. Thank you.
Don't you love that song? I love you back. You know, I was at a rally with President Trump the other day, and he said something that really hit me close to home because it's what I've experienced everywhere I've gone in this country as I've joined great Americans like you, standing strong in this no-fail mission that we have to save America. And what he said was, this is a movement of love. That we are gathered here in places like this all across the country, standing strong with joy and hope for our future because we love this great country. And we love and care for each other. And we recognize the grave threats that we face and why we must stand in this moment of crossroads as a country to defend freedom and to ensure a future of peace and prosperity. I know we have a lot of veterans here in the crowd today. Thank you so much for your service. I'm grateful to stand with you. And whether you've worn the uniform and served or not, or maybe there's someone in your family who has, or even if you don't have a personal connection to someone who served in the military, we understand and appreciate the great sacrifice that's made by our servicemen and women and their families. We understand that the most important responsibility that any president has is to serve as commander-in-chief. Now, when we look at the choice that we as voters have in this country, the contrast between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris could not be more great. We look at President Trump's record. He's the first president in my lifetime who has not started any new wars. What does that say? And we look at the disastrous and destructive record of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. As we sit here today, we are embroiled in multiple wars in different regions of the world.
We are closer to the brink of World War III than we ever have been, and closer to the brink of nuclear Armageddon. That's the reality that we face. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists say we are closer to that doomsday clock, Armageddon, nuclear Armageddon, than we ever have been. Who we choose as our commander-in-chief matters, not only for those of us who serve, but for all of us as Americans and for humanity at large. President Trump is our best and only hope to save our country and to save the world and put us back on that path towards peace and freedom and prosperity. Now, I've served in the Army over 21 years. I've deployed to 3 different war zones, and I was just on Army duty a few days ago at Fort Sill in Oklahoma. I am a commander of a drill sergeant battalion. How many people here still remember their drill sergeants from boot camp? Yeah, you never forget those guys. But I went and I attended a graduation of a basic training class that went through. There were several hundred new soldiers who are proudly marching across that field in their brand new sharp uniforms. There were thousands of people there, their family and friends, finally getting to come and congratulate them and greet them. And as they were marching across that field, it was so moving both to see this new generation of Americans who volunteered to serve our country, who took that oath to the Constitution, just as we have, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to be willing to put their lives on the line for the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. But as I sat there and watched them march across that field, I understood yet again in a deeply personal way why this election matters so much. If we allow Kamala Harris to be elected as commander-in-chief, it is those young men and women and so many others across the country who will pay the price for the wars that she will lead us into. I thought of their families, their moms and dads that were sitting there watching their young sons and daughters walk across that field. And I thought of friends of mine who paid the ultimate price as we were deployed to the Middle East. Parents who never got to say that final goodbye. We need a leader in the White House who values the lives of every single American. We need a leader in the White House who has the courage and strength to fight for peace. A leader in the White House who will stand up to the military-industrial complex, stand up to the warmongers in Washington from both political parties, because he loves our country and he loves the American people, and he is fighting for our freedom and our future. Our founding fathers... Trump, yes. Trump. So we got 48 hours to go. Our founding fathers were very intentional in the words that they put in our founding documents. When they wrote that preamble to the Constitution, they said, "We the people." That is a call to action, my friends. They reminded us that our government only exists with the consent of the governed. So for those of us who love our great country and cherish peace and freedom, it is our responsibility to do all that we can to save our country, to defend our freedom and our future. We got 2 days to do that. We got to do better than just vote ourselves, though. I want to challenge every single one of you here. Who's voted already, by the way? All right. Every one of you, before you lay your head down tonight, I want you to take responsibility for 10 people in your lives to make sure that they get out and cast their vote right alongside you. Every single vote will make the difference. Your vote in Pennsylvania could be the difference between saving our country or putting us in a place where we end up down this path of destruction that Kamala Harris has led us on. I would say no pressure, but the pressure is on. We got to save our country. I'm proud to stand with you, my friends. Over the next 2 days, let's send President Trump back to the White House to save our country and to fight for the American people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Call out the liars.
Thank you so much. Here we are, the night before the most important election of our lives. There's no place else I'd rather be than here with you, standing proud to support the President of the United States, who is fighting for the people, who is fighting for peace, and who has in his heart putting America first. You know, the most important quality that I look for in any elected leader, but especially the President of the United States, is someone who wakes up every single day asking himself, what can I do for the American people? I just spent the first half of the day before I came here in Western North Carolina, and we went through different areas in Asheville and the surrounding communities where people are still suffering and struggling in the wake of Hurricane Helene. And I was moved almost to tears many times as people shared with me their stories of loss, the funerals that they are going to for their loved ones who were killed in that disaster. There was a firefighter that gave me this bracelet with tears in his eyes in memory of his battalion chief, Tony Garrison, whose end of watch was on September 27, 2024, because he went out to save someone's life and brought them back. He heard that there was someone else who needed help, went out, rescued them, and brought them back. They said, my parents are still out there, please go and help them. He went out to find them and never came back. On the bottom of this black bracelet, it says, greater love has no one than this, that a person will lay down his life for his friends. We have a president in Donald Trump who's willing to lay down his life for us. It meant the world to the people in Western North Carolina that he showed up there for them. It meant the world to people in different parts of the country, like East Palestine, Ohio, when he showed up for them. That's the difference between President Trump and Kamala Harris. Anyone who has spent a moment with President Trump understands how much he cares about the people, how much he cares about us. I can tell you as a soldier, someone who's been deployed multiple times to different war zones, someone who proudly wears the uniform, he cares about our men and women in uniform. He is committed to ending wars, not starting them. He is committed to truly bringing about peace and having the courage and the strength to stand up against the warmongers in Washington. Our choice in this election and the victory we need to deliver for President Trump tomorrow is the choice between Kamala Harris and 4 more years of tyranny, poverty, and war, and more war. Or in President Trump, someone who will stand up and defend our freedom and put us back on that path towards peace and prosperity. Let's deliver that victory for Donald Trump tomorrow. Send him back to the White House where we can all join him to make America great again. Thank you all so much for your love of our country. Thank you for defending freedom. Let's make it happen.